Chapter 1236. Poochie. Tesla's whole body was scent flying. His chest was completely stained with dark red blood, and he no longer had his original neat image. His hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely unkempt. He looked like a beggar who had been driven out of his home. "You're crazy. You're actually using the law of the earth on your own land." Tesla spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at Gaia, dumbfounded. "Huh, it seems that I'm being unreasonable. I thought I was a scientist, but I forgot that this is a battlefield of life and death." Tesla suddenly grabbed a thunderbolt in his hand, which looked just like Zeus Thunder God's halberd. Tesla directly inserted the thunderbolt into his chest, and then his whole body began to emit waves of piercingly cold electric light. "Come on, I'd like to see whether your law of the earth is stronger or my law of communication is stronger." Tesla's whole body's power skyrocketed more than 10 times in an instant, and unexpectedly did not lose to Gaia, who was possessed by the law of the earth. The law of the earth has been used, and the law of communication has also been forced out. It seems that Longshore Jindi is determined to kill us. Seeing Tesla's desperate fight, Temujin suddenly understood that the situation had reached an extremely dangerous point. If they did not think of a way to save Tesla's life now, after Tesla died, they would not be able to survive either. "Your Majesty Genghis Khan, you can also use your power of laws." Hearing Temujin talking to himself, Gahan suddenly said with a smile, "You're actually encouraging me to use the power of laws?" Temujin looked at Gahan with a dull look in his eyes. "Don't you know that if I use the power of laws, you won't even be able to live for a minute? Your Majesty, even if you don't want to, it's not the end of the line yet. Your Majesty Genghis Khan, there's no need for you to use the power of laws. Moreover, even if your Majesty uses the power of the rule, it's not a big deal. Not only can I live for a minute, but I can also live for another hour." Gahan said bluntly. Indeed, Gahan had hit the nail on the head. The power of the natural order was a power that only Yuan Ko, or an Emperor's sword-level sword wielder, possessed. To put it bluntly, it was the use of the power of the natural order of the world to launch an attack on the opponent. Regardless of whether it was Gaia's Terra precept or Tesla's communication precept, they were actually the power of the natural order. One was the natural order of the earth, while the other was the natural order of thunder. However, the rule power was not something that could be used as one wished. It was fine for desolate-level Yuan Ko and top-notch Emperor sword wielders. It was not a big deal for them to use it. However, the Hong-grade Yuan Ko didn't have such freedom. Once he used the power of rule, he would have to bear the backlash of the power of rule, which would be a long period of painful torture. It was said that after Sword Mistress Gaia used the power of rule, she would be petrified for about half a year. Tesla's body, on the other hand, would constantly feel the pain of having his heart pierced by hundreds of millions of volts of electricity. In short, unless it was necessary, the Hong-grade Yuan Ko would not use his own power of rule at all. However, there was an advantage to using the power of rule, which was that the intensity of the battle would increase by more than 10 times in an instant. A battle that might have taken a day to decide the outcome would often be decided in less than 10 minutes. This was also the reason why Longshore Jindi had ordered Gaia to use the Terra precept directly. At this time, Temujin was still hesitating whether to use the power of rule or not. Perhaps he could defeat Gahan before Tesla died without using the power of rule? While he was hesitating, Temujin and Guhan fought in a stalemate for 7 or 8 minutes. As for Kungana and Adam, who had fought with Gahan before, one was a little lowly who only knew how to eat. The other was an irrational giant, so he did not use his power of rule. But in fact, they could also use the power of rule. P.S. The author admits that the setting of the power of rule was actually added later. Some readers complained to the author that the battles of the 100-class Yuan Bandit looked very monotonous and weren't even as strong as the Yang-class Yuan Bandit. They wondered if the 100-class Yuan Bandit should have his own special power. The author thought it made sense, so he added the setting of the power of rule, spreading the power that originally belonged to Gahan to the other Yuan Kos. So this paragraph seems a bit abrupt. After all, the previous Hong-grade Yuan Ko had never used the power of rule, so the author will explain it here. I'm sorry. Temujin, save me. I can't hold on any longer. At this time, Tesla really could not hold on any longer. Gaia's ability was originally above Tesla's, plus the suppression of close-range combat over long-range combat, and more importantly, the suppression of laws. Gaia's power of rule was the law of the earth, while Tesla's power of rule was the law of alternating electricity. If Tesla's power of rule was simply the law of lightning, then Gaia's law of earth would be at the same level as his, and there would be no suppression between laws. But Tesla's power of rule was the law of alternating electricity, one of the two branches of the law of lightning. It did not contain all the power of rule of lightning, and in terms of level, it was naturally weaker than Gaia's law of earth. All kinds of disadvantages entangled together, which doomed Tesla's failure. After 7 or 8 minutes of the collision of the power of rule, the lightning on Tesla's body had been extinguished by 70 to 80%, which was a sign that he was about to die. If the last 20% of the lightning was also gone, then Tesla would really die in the hands of Longsure Jindi. Seeing that Gahan was still alive and kicking, Temujin knew that it was impossible to force Gahan back in a few minutes. But if he did not save the dying Tesla in a few minutes, then when Gaia had time to spare, he would be the next to die. You forced me to use the law of conquest. Just as Temujin was about to use his power of rule, he suddenly sensed a similar power of rule erupting from the left. Law of the Blade. Guan Yu roared, and the green dragon crescent blade in his hand instantly grew more than 10 times, becoming more than 40 meters long. It seems that Guan Yu has also been forced to use the power of rule. Temujin breathed a sigh of relief and quickly held back the law of conquest that he was about to use. Since Guan Yu had already used the power of rule, he could instantly get rid of the pirate sword fairy to rescue Tesla, who was in danger, and he did not need to use the power of rule anymore. On the other side, after seeing Guan Yu use the power of rule, Tesla's momentum suddenly shook. He, who was originally in decline, suddenly made a few beautiful counterattacks and had the momentum of a salted fish turning over. Your Majesty, this old man can't stop him. The pirate sword fairy transmitted his voice to Longsure Jindi. At this time, the pirate sword fairy was not much better than Tesla. Blood was constantly flowing from the corner of his mouth, and the personal shield covering his body had consumed 80% of its energy. The pirate sword fairy was already an arrow at the end of its flight. In the face of Guan Yu, who had used the power of rule, the pirate sword fairy was really powerless. Hurry up! Kill Tesla quickly. Don't take into account the power of the law of earth. Seeing this scene, Longsure Jindi was also anxious. Now was the most critical time. If he could kill Tesla before Guan Yu came to rescue him, then the overall situation would be set. But if Guan Yu and Tesla fought side by side, then it would be very funny. The great achievement that he was about to get would probably fly away. But would he really make it in time? At this time, the pirate sword fairy was already powerless to stop Guan Yu, and it would only take a few seconds for Guan Yu to rush to Tesla's side. Longsure Jindi asked himself if he could kill Tesla in a few seconds, even if he used all his trump cards. What should I do? Should I use that thing? Longsure Jindi probed his dimensional pocket with his thoughts. In his dimensional pocket, there was a big killer weapon. Once this big killer weapon was used, it would not be difficult to kill Tesla in seconds. But once he used it, it would not be so easy to find a second one. Sir Pirate, let's change hands. Just as Jindi was hesitating, he suddenly heard Gahan say to the pirate sword fairy. The pirate sword fairy was stunned at first, and then instantly opened a void door beside him. In the blink of an eye, he passed through the void door and appeared at Gahan's side. He took over Gahan's task and fought with Temujin, who was somewhat stupefied and had not had time to react. Gahan, on the other hand, put down Temujin and charged at Guan Yu. Damn it, it's all this damn dimensional wall's fault. Seeing the pirate sword fairy and Gahan easily pass through the void door, Temujin clenched his teeth in anger. If it were not for Longsure Jindi and Gu Shirhan's sneak attack, first being trapped by the dimensional wall, and then being sealed by the void array, making it impossible for them to move through the void door. They would have escaped long ago. Why would they need to risk their lives by using the power of law? But this Gohan is really bold. He actually took the initiative to deal with Guan Yu, who used the power of law. Does this guy not want to live? Temujin thought again. He felt that Gohan's head might have been kicked by a donkey. Otherwise, he would not have made such a stupid move. Boom! With a violent collision sound, Gohan and Guan Yu's 40-meter-long green dragon crescent moon blade collided. Just when everyone thought that Gohan would be easily sent flying by this green dragon crescent moon blade, something unexpected happened. When Gohan's sword hit Guan Yu's green dragon crescent moon blade, not only was Gohan not sent flying, but Guan Yu could not help but take 2 steps back. Obviously, Guan Yu had fallen into a disadvantageous position in this blow. The power of law. Guan Yu, Temujin, Tesla, and even Longsure Jindy and the Pirate Sword Fairy all exclaimed in unison. They saw a scene that they could not believe in their entire lives. They actually saw the power of law in a spirit sword level swordsman. That ordinary long sword could actually block the green dragon crescent moonblade with the power of law. Apart from the fact that the long sword itself also represented law, there was absolutely no other explanation. You illusory person, how could you? As the direct opponent, Guan Yu's feeling was the most obvious. In that collision just now, Guan Yu had indeed felt the real power of law. And in terms of the level of the power of law, the level of Gohan's power of law seemed to be above his own power of law. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Guan Yu suddenly entered a berserk state, and the 40-meter-long green dragon crescent moon blade danced like a violent storm. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would be scared silly. But Gohan did not panic in the slightest. The celestial sword in his hand deftly blocked each of Guan Yu's blades. Both sides collided with each other like this, without the slightest intention of retreating. Amazing. If it weren't for the fact that Gohan is only a spirit sword level sword wielder, if Gohan could have the power of an emperor sword level. No, only the power of an immortal sword level would be enough. As long as Gohan has the power of an immortal sword level, I'm afraid he can directly defeat Guan Yu, who has used the power of law and not in this evenly matched state. Looking at this battle, Longsure Jindy could not help but sigh. But this is strange. Why is there such a gap between the power of law? Could it be that this is not an ordinary power of law, but the real power of law, the power of law comprehended by oneself? Longsure Jindy's pupils shrank, and he exclaimed in a low voice. Although as an Emperor Sword level sword wielder, he could also use rule power, this rule power was not something he had comprehended himself. Instead, it was something that came with his Emperor Sword level sword mistress, Gaia's sword. As long as he synchronized the Emperor Sword level sword mistress, he would be able to grasp the rule power. All the Emperor Sword level sword wielder in the world had obtained their rule power the same way. However, there was a legend among the Emperor Sword level sword wielder. It was said that there were 2 geniuses in this world, Kinzu and Jitian Jindy. Before they had become Emperor Sword level sword wielder, they had already mastered the power of law. Therefore, their rule power was not given to them by their own Emperor Sword level sword mistresses, but they comprehended it through their own comprehension. The rule power that they obtained was even purer. It was the rule power that truly belonged to the sword wielder. Therefore, this rule power had an innate advantage when facing other Yuanko's rule power or Emperor Sword level sword wielder's rule power. It came with a natural level suppression buff. More importantly, the power of law comprehended by oneself was different from the power of law bestowed by the sword mistress. The power of law comprehended by oneself did not need to bear the backlash, and was the power that truly belonged to the sword wielder. Never mind, it doesn't matter if he comprehended it or not. I don't have time to care about his business. It's more important to kill Tesla first. Longsure Jindy woke up from his thoughts and turned to command Gaia's battle with all his strength. On the other hand, seeing that his own reinforcements had been blocked by a mere spirit sword level sword wielder, Tesla, whose momentum had skyrocketed, declined in an instant and became even weaker than before. The lightning on his body became more and more erratic, and it looked like he was about to be defeated by Gaia's power of law. Tesla, hold on. I'm coming to save you. Conquer the rule. Temujin, who had thought that he could hold back, helplessly found that he could not hold back in the end. In the end, he could only burst out his own power of law. I can't hold it anymore. The pirate sword immortal was also a bit of a coward. Seeing that Temujin had used his power of law, he directly retreated from the front of the battlefield. Temujin was overjoyed. At this time, Gahan was entangled with Guan Yu, and Longsure Jindi did not have the Emperor's Sword level sword mistress in hand, so he did not dare to come out to fight. Thus, it should not be a problem for him to protect Tesla's life. Thinking of this, Temujin flew directly toward the distressed Tesla. It's over. It's all for nothing. Seeing this scene, Longsure Jindi sighed in his heart, and at the same time, his mind once again entered the dimensional pocket. When he was ready to use his trump card, Gahan once again gave Longsure Jindi an unexpected surprise. Zhu Xian, I'm counting on you. After Gahan blocked Guan Yu's green dragon crescent blade with his sword, he directly threw out the Zhu Xian sword in his hand. The Zhu Xian sword turned into the form of a sword mistress in the air, like a goddess descending to the world, and blocked in front of Temujin. Lady Zhu Xian. Seeing the arrival of Lady Zhu Xian, the first to react was not the others, but the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas who were onlookers. The moment the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas saw Lady Zhu Xian, as the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, they were so scared that they knelt on the ground at the first moment, exclaiming the name of Lady Zhu Xian, and at the same time looking at Lady Zhu Xian, shivering. F***CK. You released the sword mistress at this time. Faced with the Ultis sword that suddenly appeared in front of him, and discovered that it could also use the power of the natural order, Temujin could not help but want to curse out loud, not knowing whether to say it or not. Guan Yu, that guy's sword mistress has been released, and he can't stop you anymore. Hurry up and save Tesla. Although he was a little flustered by the appearance of the Zhu Xian sword, he quickly reacted. Since Gahan's sword mistress had been released, he had become a turtle without a shell, and had lost the power to entangle Guan Yu. Was there no difference in this? The only difference was who was going to save Tesla. Okay. Guan Yu nodded, and just as he was about to sweep past the toothless Gahan, Gohan's lips curled into a smile. Then, in front of the crowd, under the gazes of the three Yuan Ko, the pirate immortal swordsman, and Longsure Jindi, he took out another sword mistress from his dimensional pocket, unsheathed it, and released it into the air as another beautiful girl. Oh my god, Lady Zhu Xian. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, who had not yet hardened their knees, were once again scared out of their wits. Once again, they cried out the name of Lady Zhu Xian and continued to tremble. Are my eyes deceiving me? The pirate immortal swordsman and Longsure Jindi looked at Lady Zhu Xian, who had just been released, and then at the sword mistress who was still fighting with Temujin. After confirming that Gahan had released two sword mistresses at the same time, the shock in their minds was like a tsunami, and it could be said that their entire worldview had been overturned in an instant. In this world, there was actually someone who could release two sword mistresses at the same time. Longsure Jindi and the pirate immortal swordsman had a curse that they did not know if they should say. Chapter 1237. The reason why Gahan concealed the secret that he could have two sword ladies at the same time for a long time before this was because treasuring a jade ring would become a crime. If he didn't have the power to protect his secret, he would just be courting death. But now, the situation was completely different. The current Gahan was no longer the Gahan who needed to be cautious to protect his secret. The current Gahan could resist the flood-level Yuan Ko with his own strength, and he could challenge one of the strongest Emperor Sword level sword bearers in the world as a Spirit Sword level sword bearer. To put it bluntly, apart from the few Desolation level Yuan Ko, Gahan couldn't think of anyone else in this world who could pose a threat to his life. In this case, there was no need for Gahan to hide it anymore. When one didn't have the strength, it was wisdom to pretend to be a pig, but when one had the strength, one would be an idiot. Gahan was not a good person who didn't ask for anything in return. nor was he the kind of Lei Feng who did good deeds without leaving his name. Gahan wanted to save the world, so Gahan must obtain the whole world. The emperor ruled the world, and the emperor also had to bear the burden of the world. Gahan had decided to use today's battlefield to strangle the 3 flood level Yuan co-bearers as a basis to spread his prestige in the entire human world and the Yuan co-world. Gahan wanted to let all humans know that from today on, there was another supreme emperor rising in the human world. There was no need to hide anything anymore. Gahan had decided to show his strength in front of all humans little by little. The appearance of these 2 sword ladies at the same time was the first step for Gahan to shock the world. If you don't believe it, Longsure Jindi was the first human to be deeply shocked by Gahan's dual sword ladies. Yes, both are spirit sword level sword ladies. That's right, they're all sword maidens of spirit sword level. Longsure Jindi looked at the 2 Gahan sword maidens that appeared in the air at the same time, and once again confirmed the level of these 2 sword maidens. What did this mean? This meant that Gahan had created an unprecedented legend, becoming the first sword wielder in history to possess 2 spiritual swords at the same time. This was something that even Jitian Jindi and Sir Kinzu had not been able to do, and from the looks of it, these 2 spiritual sword-level sword mistresses were a bit too strong to be able to suppress both Guan Yu and Temujin at the same time. That's right, the combat power displayed by Zhu Xian and Celestial Demise was simply too astonishing. These 2 spirit sword grade sword maidens fought separately, and with their own strength, they were actually able to suppress Guan Yu and Temujin, or rather, they were able to beat them to the point where they were somewhat unable to hold on. The opponent of Ultis was Temujin. Temujin's swordsmanship focused on violence and aggressiveness, full of murderous intent. On the other hand, Ultis's swordsmanship was even more violent and aggressive than Temujin's. The murderous intent filled the entire sky, giving a feeling of suffocation. In my previous life, there were no less than 10 million humans who died in my hands. Although in this life, there are not as many as in my previous life, each and every one of them are dragons and phoenixes among men. The combined murderous intent of both lives is enough to overturn the whole world, but to be suppressed by a sword maiden in terms of murderous intent, this is really too frightening. Temujin could not understand why his murderous intent was inferior to that of Sword Maiden. If Temujin knew that the 4 swords of Ultis had once formed the immortal execution formation and slaughtered tens of thousands of true immortals, he would definitely understand. And what made Temujin feel even more despair was that his power of laws actually had no effect on Ultis. Logically speaking, in a battle, the side who had the power of laws against an opponent who did not have the power of laws would have a decisive and terrifying suppressive ability. But what Temujin could not understand was that this sword maiden in front of him, whether it was the strength of her energy or the level of her wielder, was clearly only a spirit sword grade sword maiden. But she could also use the power of laws like an emperor's sword grade sword maiden. What was even more frightening was that this sword maiden's power of laws was not like theirs, which borrowed the power of laws between heaven and earth. This sword maiden's power of laws seemed to originate from within her own body. To put it simply, whether it was Temujin, Gaia, or Yuan Ko and sword maidens, their power of laws was borrowed from heaven and earth. They borrowed and returned. So after using the power of laws, there would be strong side effects. The ownership of the power of laws was in the hands of heaven and earth, not in their hands. But Ultis's power of laws belonged to her and was emitted from her own body. The ownership of laws was in the hands of Ultis itself. This was very frightening. This meant that Ultis could use its own power of laws without fear of any backlash. Moreover, this power of laws was even purer, and in terms of level, it naturally suppressed the power of laws that Temujin borrowed. Whether it was sword techniques or the power of rules, Temujin was horrified to discover that he was far inferior to Ultis in both areas. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that Ultis itself was too low in level, only at the level of a spiritual sword. Therefore, its attack was far inferior to Temujin's, so Temujin did not have to worry about his own life. The same thing happened to Guan Yu. If the immortal eradication sword attack was said to be filled with absolute killing intent, then the immortal extinguish sword attack was extremely complicated and confusing. When fighting with celestial extinguish, Guan Yu would even fall into illusions from time to time. He had just blocked a strike from celestial extinguish, and then he would find his beloved big brother standing in front of him. He had slashed at celestial extinguish, but the result was that the slash seemed to have landed on Diao Chan's body, which made Guan Yu's heart ache. Although Guan Yu was able to see through these illusions as soon as they appeared thanks to his strength as a Rungi-level Yuan bandit, the continuous appearance of these illusions made Guan Yu extremely annoyed. In the end, his mind was even a little confused. Soon, he clearly could have used a better move, but because of his momentary confusion, he made a mistake, giving the immortal extinguishing sword an opportunity to counterattack. In short, these two flood-level Yuan Ko were completely suppressed by their opponents, and their lives might not be in danger for a while, but it was impossible for them to leave to help Tesla, who was being attacked by Gaia. Hey, this is the first time I've experienced the fighting style of a normal swordsman. Seeing that his Ultis and Celestial Extinguish had perfectly suppressed their opponents, Guhan said with some emotion. For a long time, Guhan had been fighting above his level, and he often relied on Guhan's own swordsmanship to fight. He had never been like a normal swordsman who relied on the power of his sword maidens. He only needed to hide in a safe place and enjoy his life. Until today, Guhan could leisurely take out a sofa from his dimensional pocket and then leisurely sit on it. He stretched lazily and at the same time watched his two sword maidens fight. This was a real swordsman. He had lived his days like a dog. Damn it, I'm so pissed. Seeing Guhan's leisurely look, Celestial Extinguish was so angry that its teeth itched. Well, we haven't fought for 1,000 years, so it's just the right time to come out and exercise our muscles. Ultis said indifferently. Without its sister support, Celestial Extinguish had nothing to say and could only vent its unhappiness on Guan Yu. For a moment, Guan Yu became unstable. Damn it, if this goes on, Guhan will steal the limelight. After all, Longshi Jindi was an Emperor Sword-level swordsman. After the initial shock, he quickly recovered from it, and then keenly discovered a problem. At this time, all the swordsman's attention was on Guhan's two sword maidens, and he, a genuine Emperor Sword-level swordsman, seemed to have become the background. This was unacceptable to Longshi Jindi, who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make a great contribution. Gaia, let me help you. Longshi Jindi made up his mind, and, at the same time, took out his immortal sword-level sword maidens. In the blink of an eye, he appeared at Gaia's side, and together with Gaia, besieged Tesla. Seeing Longshi Jindi personally taking action, Guhan became a little interested. He glanced at Longshi's battle, and then couldn't help but curl his lips. This Longshi Jindi swordsmanship was really unsightly. At most, it was at the level of his 14-year-old self. Guhan didn't think that at the age of 14, his swordsmanship could already crush 99% of the human beings in the world. For Longshi Jindi, who had climbed to the position of Jindi from an ordinary swordsman, to have such swordsmanship was already a very remarkable thing. It was like a singer running to an actor, and unexpectedly being able to make $1 billion in the box office was already very remarkable. But no matter how bad Longshi Jindi's swordsmanship was, he definitely had the fighting strength of an immortal sword level. Coupled with Gaia, Tesla's situation had already reached a point of no return. The lightning in his body had already declined to the extent of a flame. It could be foreseen that in 5 or 6 seconds at most, this flood-level Yuan Ko would become the first sacrifice of today's battle. Human beings, I won't let you have an easy time. Don't think of winning so easily. Tesla, who had been forced to a dead end, threw his life aside and decided to perish together with Longshi Jindi. Even if he couldn't kill Longshi Jindi, he would absolutely make him recuperate in bed for 10 years. Therefore, Tesla's body suddenly began to crack, and his skin and flesh slowly peeled off like sand, leaving only a ball of lightning floating quietly in front of Longshi Jindi. Victory! Seeing this ball of lightning, Longsure Jindy breathed a sigh of relief. This was Tesla's core of the law, which was an existence similar to godhood. As long as this core of the law was shattered, Tesla would be completely dead, and there would be absolutely no possibility of resurrection. Gaia, do it! Longsure Jindy calmly said to Gaia, while suppressing the ecstasy in his heart. Longsure Jindy was not stupid. He had expected that Tesla would inevitably be unwilling and would probably perish together with him at the last moment. Therefore, Longsure Jindy let Gaia, who was more powerful and had a stronger defense, destroy Tesla's core of the law, while Longsure Jindy began to retreat quickly, intending to stay away from this dangerous thing. How could Tesla let Longsure Jindy go so easily? In less than 1,000th of a blink of an eye, Tesla's core of the law appeared beside Longsure in a strange way. Tesla's law was electricity, and electricity could be conducted at will. In particular, when Tesla only had the core of the law left, the power of the law could burst out in a purer way. Before his death, Tesla deliberately shot a ball of lightning into the sea, causing the seawater to burst out in an instant, so that the whole air was filled with water droplets from the seawater. Seawater was salty, and its conductivity was extremely strong. Therefore, Tesla instantly appeared beside Longsure Jindy by conducting electricity through the seawater droplets permeating the air. No one in the world had ever beaten Tesla to the point that he only had the core of the law left, so no one knew that Tesla actually had such a trump card. Therefore, Longsure Jindy was stunned. He looked at the core of the law that suddenly appeared in front of him and described the frightening power of thunder and lightning. At this time, his sword mistress was still at least 1 second away from him. Boom! Of course, Tesla would not give Longsure Jindy this 1 second. Almost at the moment it appeared, the core of the law exploded without hesitation. A roar that could shatter everyone's eardrums enveloped the entire dimensional wall. The staff responsible for recording outside the dimensional wall directly covered their ears and knelt on the ground. Blood flowed out of their ears. At the moment when the core of the law broke out, their eardrums had been pierced by the shrill sound. Fortunately, the dimensional wall blocked the voltage as high as several billion volts. Otherwise, no ordinary person within a radius of 10 kilometers could have survived. Tesla. When Guan Yu and Tai Muzhen found that their eyes were shrouded by a pale and dazzling electric light, and they could not see anything, they realized that Tesla, who had been fighting with them for hundreds of years and getting along with them for hundreds of years, was really dead. The two of them uttered 2 mournful cries in unison. These 2 mournful cries were for Tesla, but they were also for themselves. However, at the moment when Tesla's core of the law broke out, they also received the last message from Tesla. I will perish together with Longsure Jindy. Don't bother me anymore. Take advantage of the fact that Longsure Jindy is seriously injured to escape quickly. So the question was Longsure Jindy seriously injured by Tesla's perishing together? Guan Yu and Tai Muzhen were absent-mindedly dealing with the Celestial Extinguished Sword and the Celestial Slaying Sword. All their attention was focused on the center of the explosion just now. They were looking forward to the scene of Longsure Jindy's protective shield breaking and him falling to the ground covered in blood. After the blinding flash of lightning passed, a body covered in blood appeared in front of everyone. Great! Longsure is finally injured. Seeing this scene, Guan Yu and Tai Muzhen cheered in unison, feeling that there was hope for them to escape. But the next second, the two of them fell into despair because they found that the one covered in blood and seriously injured was not Longsure Jindy, but Gahan. Thank you very much. Behind Gahan, Longsure Jindy looked at Gahan with sincere gratitude. If it were not for Gahan standing in front of him and using his body as a meat shield for Longsure Jindy, perhaps Longsure Jindy would have been seriously injured and would not have been able to pursue the 2 Yuan Ko. Your Majesty, you are the main force. Don't let these Yuan Ko escape. As soon as Gahan finished speaking, his whole body fell into the sea. Fortunately, Long Jindi reacted quickly and caught Gahan's body, then directly cut his wrist and directly fed the golden blood in his body into Gahan's mouth. This was the fresh emperor's blood. Long Jindi was really moved by Gahan. Fortunately, save me an emperor's blood capsule. How could Gahan do a losing business? Long Jindi's life-saving grace was now in his hands. Chapter 1238. Guhan had made up his mind to make a name for himself in the human world. He wanted to make Guhan the next ruler of the human race. However, this did not mean that Guhan had to ruin his relationship with the Emperor's sword-level sword wielders. On the contrary, maintaining a good relationship with the Emperor's sword-level sword wielders was extremely important. Otherwise, Guhan would have to start a massacre and cleanse the human race. He would have to kill all the humans who opposed him and then become the savior of the human race. Although there were many disharmony in the human world, on the whole, it was still good and relatively united. Once Gahan really started a civil war with the Emperor's sword-level sword-bearers, the loss would not only be the strength of mankind, but also the trust between mankind that had been maintained for 1,000 years. Brother Guhan, rest in peace. Leave the rest to me, your big brother. He did not know if anyone had noticed, but this time, Long Jindi no longer addressed himself as emperor in front of Gahan. This meant that Long Jindi had secretly acknowledged that Guhan had the strength of an emperor's sword-level sword-bearer. Guan Yu, Temujin, die for this emperor. After settling Gahan, Long Jindi looked at Guan Yu and Temujin with a gloomy expression. At the same time, Gaia, who had been freed up, also began to move towards Temujin. Obviously, Long Jindi had targeted Temujin as his next target. Brother Guan Yu, the two of us must fight with our lives, otherwise, both of us will die here. When Temujin found out that he had been selected as the next target by Long Jindi, he began to panic and said to Guan Yu, "How do the two of us fight with our lives?" Guan Yu asked while dealing with the Celestial Demise Sword. Did you notice that after Tesla's self-destruction attack, the energy of the dimensional wall is less than 5%? As long as one of us self-destructs, the dimensional wall will shatter in an instant. The void formation that restricts the void will also disappear, and we can escape through the void. Temujin said, "So you're saying that one of us has to die?" Guan Yu gritted his teeth and said, "That's right, Brother Guan Yu. Now that Long Jindi is targeting me, I'm definitely going to die before you. So I might as well self-destruct like Brother Tesla and send Brother Guan Yu off." Temujin said vehemently, "Are you that good?" Guan Yu's eyes hesitated for a moment, but he felt that there seemed to be no problem. Since Long Jindi's next target was Temujin, then Temujin was bound to die before him. Therefore, Temujin was only doing him a favor that didn't require money. No matter how he thought about it, Temujin shouldn't have any ill intentions. "But Brother Guan Yu, I hope you could do me a favor." Temujin asked again, "What kind of help?" "As long as I can help you, I will definitely help you," Guan Yu said without hesitation. "You also know that I have millions of soldiers. After I die, they will have no one to rely on and will definitely be bullied by others. I hope that Brother Guan Yu can be their backer, help and lead them, and find a way for them to live. Don't let them be bullied by others." Temujin said these words with tears almost streaming down his face. "Okay, I promise you, as long as I'm around, I will never let your men be bullied by others." Guan Yu replied without hesitation, "Good brother, I have a golden battle flag here, which is my personal keepsake. As long as you give this golden battle flag to my men, they will understand what I mean and listen to your leadership." As Temujin struggled to fend off the attacks of Gaia and Ultis, he tossed a golden flag to Guan Yu. Looking at the interaction between Temujin and Guan Yu, Long Jindi said to Gahan with some emotion, "This Temujin is also a hero. He knows how to think for his men. It's a pity that he is Yuan Ko. Otherwise, I would definitely drink and chat with him." The fresh imperial blood was indeed extraordinary, and Guhan's injury quickly recovered a lot. However, because this was the injury caused by the self-detonation of a flood-level Yuan Ko, It contained a strong power of the law. The imperial blood could not be used like before, where it could quickly and completely heal the injured body as soon as it was used. At this time, Gahan had woken up from his coma. Although there was no problem with his movement, his body was still constantly bleeding, and various kinds of light could be faintly seen colliding on the wound. This was a confrontation between the power of the law. Before Gahan completely erased the power of the law on his wound, Gahan would not be able to completely recover his body. Not necessarily. Gahan shook his head, glanced indifferently at Temujin, who was resisting very firmly, and said with a smile, "This is an extremely cunning old fox. The last one to use the power of the law was him. I don't believe that he would be so willing to die here." "Brother Gahan, you mean?" Longsure Jindy squinted at Gahan. "Look, there will be a good show later." Gahan smiled slightly, then moved his mouth to Longsure Jindy's ear and whispered a few words. Longsure Jindy's eyes lit up, revealing an expression of admiration. At this time, a super-large dimensional vortex covering almost tens of square kilometers slowly appeared in the sky in front of Longsure Jindy and Gahan. This time, Tesla is really dead. Upon seeing the appearance of the dimensional vortex, the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. This meant that Tesla was indeed dead, and there was no possibility of any accidents or resurrection. Of course, this also meant that a large amount of money had appeared in front of Gahan and Longsure Jindy. The death of a Hung-level Yuan Ko was at least 5 million quarks of sword essence. Brother Gahan saved my life. I think Brother Gahan should enjoy this dimensional vortex alone. Longsure Jindy looked at the slowly shrinking dimensional vortex, which would disappear in a dozen seconds at most, and said with some pain. Although Longsure Jindy's sword essence had exceeded 20 million quarks, it seemed that he did not care about this 5 million quarks of sword essence. But in fact, Longsure Jindy's saliva was about to flow out. This was at least 1 million quarks of sword essence. "No, if it weren't for your majesty, how could I, Gahan, kill a Hung-level Yuan Ko like Tesla by relying on my own strength? It would be better for your majesty and I to absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex together," Gahan said with a smile. What a joke. If Gahan really enjoyed the sword essence in this dimensional vortex alone, then his life-saving grace to Longsure Jindy would almost be gone. This was a very bad deal. Good. Longsure Jindy did not decline and brought Gahan to the side of the dimensional vortex. Longsure Jindy pulled out his immortal sword-rank sword mother and sent it into the dimensional vortex, and then said to Gahan with a smile, "Do you want to let your spirit sword-rank sword mother besiege Temujin come down? Otherwise, if you only use a famous sword-rank sword mother, it would be too much of a loss." There was a limit to the amount of sword essence that a sword mother could absorb in the dimensional vortex. For example, a famous sword-rank sword mother could only absorb 100,000 quarks of sword essence at most. Therefore, Longsure Jindy said such words to Gahan, asking Gahan to let his spirit sword-rank sword mother fly down, because the upper limit of sword essence that a spirit sword-rank sword mother could absorb was 1 million quarks. No need. Gahan shook his head, took out his Qi Dian's sword with a smile, and sent it together with Longsure Jindy. "Then I won't be polite." Longsure Jindy smiled and began to absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex with all his strength. In the blink of an eye, 2 million quarks of sword essence had been absorbed into his immortal sword-rank sword mother. At the same time, Longsure Jindy secretly looked at Gahan and thought to himself, "As an Emperor's sword-rank swordsman, my absorption speed of sword essence is about 20 times that of a spirit sword-rank swordsman. At this time, Gahan should have absorbed 100,000 quarks of sword essence and can leave." But to Longsure Jindy's surprise, Gahan still placed his sword mother in the dimensional vortex, and Longsure Jindy could also feel that his opponent's sword mother was still continuously absorbing the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Could it be that Gahan's absorption speed of sword essence is very slow, so he hasn't finished absorbing it yet? He has 2 spirit sword rank sword mothers for the first time. I don't believe that there are no side effects at all. Maybe the absorption speed of sword essence is a side effect. Long Shi Jindi secretly guessed. Unfortunately, the result of his guess was worlds apart. Not only did Gahan's absorption speed of sword essence not decrease, but it was also several times that of a normal swordsman, only slower than Long Shi Jindi, who was an Emperor's sword rank swordsman. Just now, Long Shi Jindi had absorbed 2 million quarks of sword essence, while Guhan had also absorbed 400,000 quarks of sword essence. Although it was only 1/5 of Long Shi Jindi's, it was not as exaggerated as 1/20th. Gahan was a guy who would not let go of such a good benefit. If the starting point sword could really only absorb 100,000 quarks of sword essence, then Guhan would not hesitate to call down his execution immortal sword and use it to absorb sword essence. However, the starting point sword was not an ordinary sword mother, but a famous sword rank sword mother with the foundation of an Emperor's sword rank sword mother. When it killed Gilgamesh previously, it had absorbed 350,000 quarks of sword essence, and this had not reached the upper limit of the starting point sword. Until this time, when it shared a flood-level Yuan Ko with Long Shi Jindi, the starting point sword's dimensional vortex had absorbed 800,000 quarks of sword essence, and it had not reached the limit. However, at this time, there was no more sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Strange, this flood-level Yuan Ko should have at least 5 million quarks of sword essence. Why did it only absorb 3 million quarks of sword essence? After the dimensional vortex closed, Long Shi Jindi felt the increased sword essence in his immortal sword rank sword mother and muttered to himself with some doubts. For 3 million plus Guhan's 100,000, it was only 4 million, which did not even reach the minimum standard of flood-level Yuan Ko. What the hell? Could it be that there are also fake flood-level Yuan Ko? Long Shi Jindi shook his head, thinking that this was an accidental phenomenon, and did not think that Gahan on the side could secretly absorb 800,000 quarks of sword essence. On the other side, after Long Shi Jindi and Gahan shared the dimensional vortex caused by Tesla's death, Temujin's battle situation also fell into a precarious situation. Just like Tesla, he was about to die. Long Shi, this Khan will fight you to the death. A golden scimitar flew out of Temujin's body, and he was ready to follow Tesla's example just now, to find Long Shi Jindi and perish together with him. Quick, stop him for me. With the previous lesson, Long Shi Jindi did not dare to be careless and immediately ordered Gaia. Zhu Xian, destroy this heart of the law on the spot. Gahan also ordered Zhu Xian at the same time. Previously, Tesla's heart of the law was able to appear in front of Long Shi Jindi because of the characteristics of his heart of the law itself, which could use conductive objects to move quickly. But Temujin's heart of the law did not have this ability. He could not suddenly appear in front of Long Shi Jindi, and could only be stopped by the joint efforts of Zhu Xian and Gaia Sword halfway, and Gaia Sword directly smashed the whole heart of the law. Temujin did not even have time to self-destruct before he died. Genghis Khan, you still want me to escape to help your men, but now it seems that all 3 of us are going to die here. Seeing that Temujin's self-destruction was stopped, Guan Yu smiled miserably, touched the golden war flag in his arms, and said with a wry smile. At the same time, he looked at the 2 sword maidens, Gaia Sword and Zhu Xian, approaching him, ready to besiege him at the same time. There is not even a 1% chance of escape. Guan Yu, don't not even have the chance to self-destruct. Even if I die, I won't let you have it easy. Guan Yu roared. He was clearly not at the end of his rope, but he took the initiative to release his heart of the law from his body. This was a blood-red, seemingly smaller green dragon crescent blade. Open for me. Zhu Xian and Gaia Sword arrived, and the smaller green dragon crescent blade slashed at Celestial Extinguished sword in front of him. Damn, this old lady's beauty cannot be ruined by your hands. Seeing the great power of this blade, Celestial Extinguished sword did not dare to meet it head-on and directly dodged. As a result, the blade directly slashed at the dimensional wall behind Celestial Extinguished sword. Immediately, the whole world began to tremble. The power of this blade not only surpassed Temujin's, but also the power of Tesla's self-destruction. Under this blade, the entire dimensional wall completely collapsed, and after the remaining power of the blade penetrated the dimensional wall, it even split a hill in the distance, raising the whole hill to the ground. In the end, a blade mark of 1 kilometer long and 50 meters deep was left on the ground. But no matter how powerful this blade was, it could not change Guan Yu's fate, because the reason why this blade had such great power was completely because Guan Yu had sacrificed his life. A dimensional vortex, larger than Tesla's, began to slowly form in the air to receive Guan Yu's body. At this moment, under the shroud of the dimensional vortex, among the ruins of Guan Yu's corpse, a golden battle flag suddenly fluttered and fled into the sky at an extremely fast speed. As the battle flag fled, it shouted, "Long Shi and Guhan, this Khan won't let you off. This Khan will definitely come back for revenge." Strange, isn't this the voice of Genghis Khan? Wasn't he already dead just now? How can his voice still be heard? The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas who were in charge of watching were puzzled. "Brother Gahan, you're right. This Temujin is really cunning. He actually forged a fake core of the law to fool Guan Yu, and instead gave the real one to his opponent one step ahead of time. In the end, Guan Yu became his scapegoat. He was actually willing to give such a precious thing to the pirate sword immortal for free. Ahem! The pirate sword immortal coughed a few times and said with great emotion, "Your Majesty, I am already 65 years old this year. In another 10 years or so, it will be time for me to be buried. Even if I become an emperor sword bearer, what's the use? It will just be a waste of God's gift. I think it's better for your Majesty to keep this treasure. In the future, when the young heroes of London grow up, you can give this rule core to them. This is the most cost-effective thing to do. This, pirate brother, don't refuse it anymore. You'd better accept it." No, I can't accept it." Longshore Jindi reluctantly put the rule core into his dimensional pocket, looked at Gahan with a wry smile, and said, "Hey, pirate sword immortal, I made a fool of myself in front of you, Brother Gahan. By the way, Brother Gahan, you are only one step away from becoming a fairy sword bearer. Moreover, Brother Gahan also contributed to the killing of Tai Mujin. Why don't I give this rule core to you, Brother Gahan? Since your Majesty Longshore is so generous, I will accept it without hesitation." Guhan smiled and directly reached for the iron box containing the rule core in Jindi's hand. "Ha!" Longshore Jindi's face instantly stiffened, and the muscles of his arm holding the box instantly tightened, as if he had an impulse to hit someone. "Ha ha ha!" Guhan laughed again and again. "I was just joking. This battle is all because of your Majesty's efforts. How could I dare to hope for such an important reward? I was just joking with your Majesty. Hey, I said I'll give it to you, so naturally it will be given to you. There is no difference in the amount of credit." Longshore Jindi said with a hollow laugh. "Your Majesty, please forgive me for speaking the truth. This heart of law might be useful to some people, but to me, it's worthless. It's not even worth $1. Guhan smiled. "Oh, what do you mean?" Longshore Jindi asked curiously. "Your Majesty, have you forgotten that I have already comprehended the laws? Why would I need this rule core to help me?" Guhan's eyes flashed with disdain. "Ha ha! Yes, Brother Gahan, you are extraordinary. This rule core is indeed worthless for a genius like you, Gahan. Then I will accept it." Longshore Jindi was satisfied and put the rule core into his dimensional pocket. At this time, Guan Yu's dimensional vortex had swelled to its limit. It would be too late to absorb the sword essence inside. Longshore Jindi invited Gahan and the pirate sword immortal to absorb the sword essence inside the dimensional vortex together. But he did not expect that Gahan would say to Longshore Jindi with a smile, "Your Majesty, I have a presumptuous request. I hope your Majesty will agree to it." "Say it and let me see," Longshore Jindi said. "I owe my disciple a lot in the past few years, so I hope that my disciple can have a share of the sword essence inside the dimensional vortex." It can also be regarded as making up for my debt to her. Gohan said with some shame. Ha, of course, this is a small matter, naturally. Longsure Jindy agreed without hesitation. A trivial ancient sword grade sword bearer could at most absorb 1,000 quarks of sword essence, so it was not a big deal. So he naturally agreed. In that case, I will have to trouble your majesty's sword maiden to go to the entrance of the sword pavilion to pick up my disciple. Otherwise, by the time she comes over, the dimensional vortex will have already disappeared. The entrance of the sword pavilion? Longsure Jindy suddenly had a bad idea. But since it had come to this, Longsure Jindy could only send his immortal sword grade sword maiden to pick up the disciple. In less than 2 seconds, the sword maiden directly passed through the void gate and received Lu Shihua. Master, seeing Gohan appear in front of him, Lu Shihua's mood was extremely excited, and he could not wait to directly throw himself into Gohan's arms. It was just that the other people around made Lu Shihua a little embarrassed to act rashly. Have you finished what I asked Libai to tell you? Gohan asked faintly. Yes, it's all done. Lu Shihua nodded. Then what are you still doing here? His Majesty has already shown mercy and let you absorb the sword essence in this dimensional vortex. You still haven't taken out your sword maiden. Gohan said somewhat impatiently. Yes, master. Lu Shihua stuck out his tongue and then quickly pulled out a sword from his waist. But this sword was different from Lu Shihua's original double-winged angel sword. This sword actually had 4 pairs of wings on its back. 8-winged angel sword. Seeing this sword, Longsure Jindy was shocked, and his face suddenly became ashen. He clearly remembered that this sword was hidden in his sword pavilion in London. How could it suddenly appear in Lu Shihua's hands? Oh, just now. The matter was a bit urgent, and I forgot to inform His Majesty. Gohan showed an apologetic smile. I just sent my disciple to London's sword pavilion. Because His Majesty is fighting, I could only temporarily inform the Pirate Sword Immortal Pavilion's master. I didn't inform His Majesty and synchronized with the Spirit Sword Level Sword Maiden 8-winged Angel Sword in your sword pavilion. I hope His Majesty can forgive me. It's nothing. Miss Lu Shihua has the angel bloodline. Apart from her, there is no second person who is qualified to synchronize with this sword. It's only right to give it to her. Longsure Jindy laughed dryly a few times. In fact, he also knew that this 8-winged angel sword had no second owner except for Lu Shihua. But this was originally prepared by Longsure Jindy as a favor. If Longsure Jindy took the initiative to give this 8-winged angel sword to Lu Shihua, it would be equivalent to returning a big favor to Gohan. At least half of the life-saving grace could be offset. But now, this favor had fallen into the hands of the Pirate Sword Immortal. But just now, Miss Lu Shihua was still an ancient sword-level sword wielder. How did she become qualified to synchronize with the Spirit Sword Level 8-winged angel sword in the blink of an eye? Longsure Jindy asked with some pain in the ass. It's like this. The reason why my disciple is stuck at the ancient sword level is because the 4-winged angel sword was stolen 3 years ago, so my disciple can't go any further. Now that the 4-winged angel sword has been retrieved by my sister, plus she first obtained the famous sword level 6-winged angel sword from Yuzhong City. Moreover, the sword element in her body also meets the requirement of 100,000 quarks, so she directly completed the synchronization and coordination. Sorry for making Your Majesty laugh. Gohan laughed. So that's how it is. It seems that Brother Gohan has been prepared for a long time. Everything is in your calculations. Longsure Jindy could do nothing but laugh. He had even brought the Sword Lady of Yuzhong City with him. Obviously, he had already calculated the angel sword in his sword pavilion. Taking advantage of the fact that he was fighting and had no time to care about the sword pavilion, he had synchronized with the Pirate Sword Immortal and the 8-winged angel sword. At the same time, Longsure Jindy also felt envious in his heart. He admired Lu Shihua's good luck. Not only did she have the angel bloodline, but she also had the care of such a powerful master like Gohan. Except for some setbacks in the first 3 years, it was estimated that her future days would be smooth, without any obstacles along the way. She would smoothly synchronize with the Sword Lady of Immortal Sword level and even the Sword Lady of Emperor Sword level, becoming an Emperor Sword level sword wielder like him. Remembering that when he was young, he had suffered so many hardships and trials to climb to the position of an Emperor Sword level sword wielder. This Lu Shihua could easily reach his position just by relying on his own bloodline and master. Long Shijindi could not help but be jealous of this. At the same time, Long Shijindi further thought that Lu Shihua and Guhan were both sword bearers of Yuzhong City. With Guhan's spirit sword level, he could rival the strength of an Emperor Sword level. And Lu Shihua, who is already an Emperor Sword level sword wielder, in the future, Yuzhong City would have two Emperor Sword level sword bearers at the same time. In this case, perhaps in the future, Yuzhong City would be the world, and even the powerful Yanjing City would have to stand aside. Thinking of the era when the human world was dominated by Jindi a few decades ago, Long Shijindi had no other way but to cite Yuzhong City's good luck. Long Shijindi, the pirate sword immortal, Guhan, and Lu Shihua smoothly shared the sword elements in the dimensional vortex. Among them, Long Shijindi alone got 5 million quarks, the pirate sword immortal got 5 million quarks, and Guhan and Lu Shihua each took 1 million quarks, which added up to 7 million quarks of sword elements. From this, it could be seen that Guan Yu's strength was above Tesla's. After his death, the sword elements were about 1/3 more than Tesla's. Of course, Long Shijindi did not know this. He estimated according to his own speed that Guhan and Lu Shihua could absorb at most 200,000 quarks of sword elements. So he felt that Guan Yu's strength was only a little higher than Tesla's. What a lucky guy. In just one day, he crossed from an ancient sword rank sword bearer to a spirit sword rank sword bearer. Not only was Long Shijindi envious of Lu Shihua's encounter, but even Guhan, who facilitated everything behind the scenes, was also envious of Lu Shihua. Now, as long as Lu Shihua found the 10-winged angel sword, he could smoothly become an immortal sword rank sword bearer, which could be said to be extremely smooth. But when he thought of himself, Guhan could not help but have a headache. Although Guhan now had 85 million quarks of sword elements and could also become an immortal sword rank sword bearer, there was a big problem with Guhan's immortal sword lady. I don't know if everyone still remembers the Sword of Victory, which was the Sword of Victory that Guhan spent a 6 revolutions immortal pill to forcibly obtain the sword elements of immortal sword rank and then synchronize with it. After that, Guhan suffered from the side effects of the Sword of Victory, which led to the appearance of the identity of Gu Xianyuan. Later, as the sword elements in Guhan's body faded, the Sword of Victory, this temporary immortal sword lady, also quieted down again, but it was just silence. In fact, she was already Guhan's immortal sword lady, which was an unchangeable fact. The sword scar of the Sword of Victory in Guhan's Zifu was still there. The problem was with this Sword of Victory. Now, Guhan only needed to hold any part of the Sword of Victory, and he could instantly synchronize with the Sword of Victory again, becoming a true immortal sword lady. This sounded good, but in fact it was a huge crisis. Don't forget how Guhan was stuck in a semi-synchronized state with the Sword of Victory, unable to advance or retreat. Guhan was now completely different from ordinary sword bearers. Now, Guhan had to synchronize with 2 sword ladies of the same level in order to continue growing, or else the balance in his body would be broken. And these 2 sword ladies of the same level were not just any 2, they had to be mentally connected. Therefore, there was the story of how Guhan had to think of a way to obtain the Celestial Extinguished Sword. In other words, Guhan's immortal sword lady must be 2 sword ladies that were mentally connected, or rather, twin sword ladies. Obviously, the Sword of Victory was not such a sword lady. It did not have a sword lady that could be its twin. If Guhan chose to activate the Sword of Victory now, it meant that he would inevitably re-enter the semi-synchronized state. If he couldn't find the sword lady that was the twin of the Sword of Victory, then Guhan would be stuck in this terrible state for the rest of his life. Now, the situation Guhan was facing was Before finding the perfect way to solve the Sword of Victory, Gohan absolutely could not touch the Sword of Victory, nor could he touch the other Sword Ladies of the Immortal Sword Lady. He could only stay at the level of Spirit Sword Lady, unable to advance or retreat. Chapter 1240. After Gohan racked his brains, there were only two ways to solve the problem of the Sword of Victory. Either he could find a Sword Maiden that was twin to the Victory Sword. Then Gohan would be able to successfully become an immortal sword wielder. Or he could find a green silk sword and forcefully sever the mark between himself and the Victory Sword. Then he could find two Sword Maidens that were twin to synchronize with him. From the looks of it, the first solution was impossible. No one had ever heard of a Sword Maiden that was twin to the Victory Sword. In that case, he could only use the second solution, which was to find the green silk sword and sever the mark between himself and the Victory Sword. This made Gohan feel like he had returned to 3 years ago. He had returned to the time 3 years ago when he was searching for the green silk sword to sever his connection with the Juzi sword, so that he could synchronize with the king of Yu Gojin's sword. However, things had changed. Now, Juzi had become his indispensable sword maiden, and the king of Yu Gojin's sword had become Ku Rakin's sword maiden. He had regained his Chi Dian sword, and now he yearned for the green silk sword again. Forget it. I still have to kill my way to the Lun Yin family and have a decisive battle with Kenzu's sword soul. If I win, the Lun Yin family won't dare to not sever my green silk sword. Gohan thought to himself. However, now is not the time to kill his way into the Lun Yin family. This was because Gohan believed that he did not have the ability to defeat Kenzu's sword soul. As for twin sword maidens, it was not difficult to find them. After all, the sword tower in Yuzhong City had such a pair, Yuan-Tu and Avicii. The East Sea Dragon King, Ao Guan. The West Sea Dragon King, Ao Run. The South Sea Dragon King, Ao Qin. The North Sea Dragon King, Ao Shun. Greetings to our young friend Gohan. While Flowing Maple was thinking about the Victory Sword, the 4 Dragon Kings suddenly walked up to Gohan and took the initiative to greet Gohan. Oh, Junior Gohan greets the 4 Dragon Kings. Gohan's attitude towards the 4 Seas Dragon Kings was rather respectful because Gohan was still no match for the 4 Seas Dragon Kings when they joined forces. Besides, so what if Gohan had the ability to defeat the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas? On the contrary, without the restraint of the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas, the Sea Clan in the sea would be disadvantageous to humans. The best choice was to keep the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas to restrain the Sea Clan. Therefore, Gohan had to maintain a respectful attitude towards the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas. Young friend, you're young and extraordinary. You've achieved so much at such a young age. You actually managed to defeat Guan Yu and the other 2. I've only seen one person with such ability in my life, and that's your sword ancestor. As for the heaven-shrouding sword emperor that you guys hold in high regard, I've seen him too. He's just an empty title. He's not even a tenth of what you're capable of, said the 4 Sea Dragon Kings. Jetian Jiandi is just an empty title? He's only 1/10 of me? The words of the Dragon King of the 4 Seas made Gohan feel a little confused. His relationship with I Ching could be said to be inextricably messy. It was also because of I Ching's various backup plans that he was able to achieve what he had today. It could be said that half of Gohan's current abilities were due to I Ching. Moreover, from the time he spent with I Ching, Gohan could feel that I Ching was extremely powerful. Even if Gohan became an immortal sword wielder, he would not dare to say that he could defeat I Ching. Why did the 4 Seas Dragon Kings say that I Ching only had 1/10 of his abilities? That's right. I Ching is just a despicable person. He borrowed his power in the human world and came to the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas to ask for the green hair severing. The 4 of us were afraid of his reputation at first, but when we really fought, we realized that he was just trash. Even the weakest among us, Ao Shun, the Dragon King of the North Sea, easily defeated him and forced him to flee. If it wasn't for the fact that he gave us a lot of benefits as an apology, we would have told everyone that he was just a weakling. Ao Run, the Dragon King of the West Sea, said angrily. What kind of joke is this? Gahan felt even more confused. However, he quickly recalled what had happened in the Rise from the Ground Instance dungeon. Jitianjini was not one person, but two different people. One was Jitianjindi, who was an old man, and the other was I Ching. Moreover, I Ching had personally told him that her real title was Sahan Jindi. This seemed to make sense. The person who had suffered losses in the Dragon Palace was clearly Jitianjindi. From what the Four Seas Dragon Kings had said, at that time, Jitianjindi had already become famous, which was what had happened after he had wreaked havoc in the Celestial Court. In other words, at that time, Jitianjindi had most likely separated from I Ching. It was Jitianjindi who had come to find the Four Seas Dragon Kings alone, which was why he could not even defeat the Four Seas Dragon Kings. However, why had Jitianjindi come to find Blackhair's severing? Since he had already become an Emperor Sword wielder, why would he need Blackhair's severing? Could it be that he wanted to completely cut off his relationship with I Ching? Gohan hurriedly asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings about Jitianjindi in detail. Unfortunately, the Four Seas Dragon Kings did not know much. They told Gohan everything they could, but they did not allow Gohan to sort out any clues. Of course, Gohan had also asked the Dragon Palace if Blackhair's severing was still there. Unfortunately, the Dragon Palace had said that Blackhair's severing had been sold to Shui Wan Jindi. The Dragon Palace no longer had Blackhair's severing, so Gohan had given up on the idea. Thank you, Your Majesties, for telling me the truth. May I know why Your Majesties are looking for me? Gohan temporarily put I Ching's matter aside and asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings about their real purpose. These four old fellows would not look for him for no reason. They must have been looking for him for a reason. The Four Seas Dragon Kings hesitated at the same time and looked at each other. In the end, it was the East Sea Dragon King, Ao Guang, who spoke. May I ask, little friend Gohan, are the two sword ladies you took out the Celestial Execution Sword Lady and the Celestial Slashing Sword Lady? Yes. Gohan nodded. It seemed like the Celestial Execution Sword and the Celestial Slashing Sword were very famous. Even the Four Seas Dragon Kings had taken the initiative to look for them. So it really is the two sword ladies. The Four Seas Dragon Kings looked at each other excitedly. Then, to Gohan's surprise, they knelt in front of Gohan and said respectfully, Little Dragon King Ao Guang of the East Sea, Dragon King Ao Run of the West Sea, Dragon King Ao Chin of the South Sea, and Dragon King Ao Shun of the North Sea pay their respects to the Celestial Execution Sword Lady and the Celestial Slashing Sword Lady. We sincerely invite the two sword ladies to meet us. The sudden action of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas instantly attracted the attention of the others. The humans who were cleaning up the mess were stunned on the spot. They did not even know that the things in their hands had fallen into the sea as they watched the scene in the sky in a daze. What had happened? Why were the Four Seas Dragon Kings kneeling in front of Gohan? Isn't this a little too nonsensical? Had the heads of the Four Seas Dragon Kings been smashed by someone? What do we do? These four old dragons want to meet you. Are the two of you going to meet them or not? Upon seeing this scene, Gohan could only helplessly ask the Celestial Execution Sword and Celestial Slashing Sword in his purple palace. I don't wish to meet them. Let them go. Celestial Execution Sword's answer was clean and direct. Sigh. Wait, why chase them away? How about this, Gohan? Help us ask the four of them whose side they are on. Celestial Slashing Sword turned to Gohan. Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, please rise. Celestial Slashing Sword Lady has entrusted me with a question. Whose side are the four of you on? Gohan conveyed Celestial Slashing Sword's question to the Four Seas Dragon Kings without missing a single word. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas exchanged a few glances. In the end, the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Guang, forced himself to answer. In reply to the two goddesses, of course we are on your side. Is Celestial Slashing Sword Lady asking you the truth? Gohan continued conveying Celestial Slashing Sword's message. How would we dare lie? Apart from standing on the two goddesses' side, which other side can we stand on? Only the goddesses' side will allow us to live. The other side will only lead to death. Ao Guang said wistfully. All right, Celestial Slashing Sword Lady said that if you stand on her side, you will have to listen to my orders from now on. The entire Sea Clan will have to follow my orders. There is no room for disobedience. That way, they will be able to protect your lives in the final battle. If you agree, it will be a happy decision. Guhan was still repeating Celestial Slashing Sword words. However, Gohan had never expected that Celestial Slashing Sword would request the entire Sea Clan to listen to her orders. Would the Four Seas Dragon Kings really agree to such a request? Gohan expressed his doubts. Indeed, when Guhan mentioned the Immortal Extinguishing Sword's request, the Four Sea Dragon Kings became very hesitant. This was no longer a decision that could be made with just a few looks. After whispering to each other for a while, the East Sea Dragon King Ao Guang said with some fear, "This matter is very important. We must confirm your identity, otherwise, the four of you are trouble. The ancestral dragon deserves to be killed." Celestial Slashing Sword leaped out of its scabbard and stared fiercely at the Four Seas Dragon Kings with its hands on its hips. Then, with a sweep of the Celestial Slashing Sword, half of the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns were sliced off. Oh no! Upon seeing this scene, Gohan immediately entered a state of high alert. He was prepared to fight the Four Seas Dragon Kings at any moment. The Celestial Slashing Sword had silently sliced off the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns. One had to know that dragon horns were what the true dragon race valued the most. It was akin to a woman's hair. The Celestial Slashing Sword had sliced off the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns in one go. The Four Seas Dragon Kings would probably fight to the death with him. However, something unbelievable happened to Gohan. Not only did the Four Seas Dragon Kings not have any intention of fighting to the death with him, they didn't even show a hint of anger. Instead, their faces were filled with joy, as though they could not wait for the Celestial Slashing Sword to slice off their dragon horns. Greetings, Lady Celestial Slashing Sword. Thank you for your bestowment. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas once again knelt in front of Guhan, causing everyone at the side to stare at them again. Get up, get up. There's no point in kneeling here and there. The four of us are not the 12 useless disciples of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, nor are we the Jade Emperor's servants. We sisters don't need such things. The Celestial Slashing Sword helped the Four Seas Dragon Kings up. Speak. Do you agree to my request? Yes. Yes. The Four Seas Dragon Kings immediately answered without any hesitation. The four of us swear by the ancestral dragon soul that as long as we are alive, we will obey Lord Gohan's orders. The entire sea is Lord Gohan's world. The four of us are willing to serve Lord Gohan as the Sea Emperor, ruling over everything within the Four Seas. From this day forth, Lord Gohan's orders are the highest orders of the entire sea race. Even if the seas run dry and the rocks crumble, we will never go back on our vow today. Does this mean that I control the entire sea race? Seeing this scene, Gohan could not help but feel a little dizzy. He had never imagined that he would gain the allegiance of the Four Seas Dragon Kings in the blink of an eye and become the Sea Emperor. This was something that humans did not even dare to think about. If I wanted to lift the ban on the sea from now on and let the sea be a smooth path for humans, human ships can sail freely on the sea, and the sea race is not allowed to do anything harmful to humans. Can you agree to it? Gohan hesitated for a while and asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings. No problem, we can guarantee it. The East Sea Dragon King nodded without hesitation. However, he quickly said with some embarrassment, however, the sea race is only a deterrent to the Dragon Clan. Where the Dragon Clan is present, the other sea race will definitely not dare to harm humans. However, if the Dragon Clan is not present, we can't control the behavior of the sea race. After all, they're all Yuan Ko. I understand. Gohan nodded. Anyway, try your best. If you can save someone's life, help me save someone's life. As your Majesty, the Sea Emperor, the Four Seas Dragon Kings answered. These four old fellows are serious. Gohan saw that the expressions of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were very sincere, without any fake emotions. He sighed in his heart, but at the same time, he was filled with emotions. What exactly was the identity of the four immortal exterminating swords sisters? All right, if there's nothing else, you can go back. We sisters will never go back on our promises. When the time comes for the final battle, as long as you fulfill your promise, as long as we sisters are alive, we will protect your lives. Thank you, Lady Absolute Immortal. Thank you, Lady Absolute Immortal. After hearing the immortal exterminating sword's promise, the four seas dragon kings were immediately overjoyed. The four old fellows hugged each other to celebrate. Gahan suddenly thought that if these four old fellows hugged each other in their true dragon form, wouldn't they become a Tianjin hemp flower? Let's go. Just as Gahan was about to leave the crazy four seas dragon kings, West Sea Dragon King Ao Run suddenly woke up and walked to Gahan's side with a flattering smile. May I ask, Lord Gahan, is that Miss Gu Shirhan your elder sister? She's my elder sister. Why are you looking for my elder sister? Guhan said indifferently. Gahan could announce to the world that he had two sword maidens at the same time, but he would never announce that Gu Xianyuan and Gu Shirhan were both him. This was related to Gahan's face. Unless his life was in danger, Gahan would never admit this to others. It's like this, I don't know if Lord Guhan knows, but my family's good-for-nothing little 28 was once saved by your elder sister. West Sea Dragon King Ao Run said nervously. Oh, I know. Is there a problem? Guhan couldn't help recalling the appearance of that good-for-nothing dragon. There's no problem. It's just that ever since my good-for-nothing brat was saved by Miss Gu Shirhan, he missed her so much that even I, as his father, can't stand it anymore. Originally, us four brothers came here with an important purpose, which was to propose to Miss Gu Shirhan on behalf of my good-for-nothing brat. Now that Miss Gu Shirhan isn't here, I can only tell Lord Gahan. Can you tell Miss Gu Shirhan? My good-for-nothing brat is really impossible. Don't even think about it. Before the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run could finish speaking, Guhan's face stiffened, and he bluntly rejected him. But Lord, my brat, don't say any more. Otherwise, I won't be the Ocean Emperor anymore. You can find whoever you want to be the Ocean Emperor. I won't play with you anymore. Guhan's face was extremely ugly. Yes. What else could West Sea Dragon King Ao Run say? He could only retreat with his tail between his legs. Chapter 1241. Outside London, the excitement had come to an end. The battlefield where 3 flood-level Yuan Ko had died had been cleaned up and then temporarily sealed off by the London Sword Committee, forbidding anyone from approaching that place. On the other hand, the madness on the internet had just begun. In order to prevent leaks and to prevent hurting the innocent, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Longsher Jindi had ordered all live broadcasts to be stopped, and other ordinary people on the city wall were prohibited from watching. Only the sword bearers could watch from the sidelines. However, after the appearance of Gahan, Longsher Jindi ordered the camera crew to start recording the battlefield. After all, this was the battle that Longsher Jindi was going to prove himself. Nothing could prove Longsher Jindi himself better than a live battle video. So when the battle was over, all the news media in London received a press release at the same time, and then cut off all the news that was being broadcast at the same time and broadcast the latest news from this station and the exciting battle video. It was not until this time that the people of London knew that during the time when they were eating melon seeds just outside London, 3 flood-level Yuan Ko had died there. After a short period of surprise and astonishment, the whole of London fell into a carnival. Except for those who were still playing games, almost all the Londoners rushed out of their homes, walked into the streets, and began to sing and dance to celebrate the glory of London. Just 10 minutes later, other Bay cities also received this shocking news. Although it was not like London, where there was an official order for all TV stations to broadcast the same news, most of the TV stations in other cities cut off all live TV broadcasts at the same time. Like the news media in London, they broadcast this exciting news to all humans. As a result, The whole human world was in great shock. In fact, a lot of shocking things had happened recently. It started with the invasion of Yuzhong City, which ended with the appearance of Gu Xianyuan, and Gu Xianyuan instantly became the most popular internet celebrity. However, not long after she became an internet celebrity, Gu Xianyuan became a murderer. She became a wanted criminal by the headquarters of the Sword Commission. Then it was Gu Xianyuan's sister, Gu Shihan, who came on the scene and shamelessly challenged Long Shi Jiandi, which aroused the anger of the Londoners, and a 5-day counter-challenge began. As a result, the Londoners were slapped in the face. Gu Shihan defeated almost all the sword-bearers in London by herself, and even defeated an immortal sword-level sword-bearer as a spirit sword-level sword-bearer. This completely aroused everyone's curiosity. When the masses gathered in front of the TV, waiting for the unparalleled battle between the spirit sword-level sword-bearer and the emperor sword-level sword-bearer, Gu Shihan actually fell ill. The audience waited for an hour in front of the TV, but Gu Shihan did not appear. After that, the audience completely gave up on the live broadcast. After scolding Gu Shihan, they went to do their own things and no longer paid attention to the situation of a live broadcast. But they never thought that they would be given such a huge shock before entering the dark night. The 3 Hong level Yuan Ko who came to watch the battle had all died in the hands of Long Shi Jiandi. The masses watched the TV news in a somewhat dazed state. Anyway, all the TV stations were rolling the TV news. Even if they did not see it at the first time, they would not miss it at the second time. Only then did the masses confirm that the 3 Hong level Yuan Ko who had committed heinous crimes were really dead. While shouting "Long live Long Shi Jiandi" and His Majesty Long Shi was invincible, the audience also found something unusual in this news. In addition to exaggerating the power and strength of Long Shi Jiandi, the host also mentioned a name that had disappeared from the audience's ears for a long time: Gahan. The frequency of this name appearing in the news was second only to Long Shi Jiandi, even higher than the frequency of the Pirate Sword Fairy. It was not until this time that the audience realized that this earth-shattering battle was not completed by Long Shi Jiandi alone. There were also Gahan and the Pirate Sword Fairy as helpers. This made it a little difficult for the audience to understand. The Pirate Sword Fairy was an immortal sword-level sword-bearer in London, so it was natural that he would help His Majesty Jiandi. But why did this Gahan appear on the battlefield? Wasn't he a famous sword-level sword-bearer? Wasn't he the previous master of the sword garret in Yuzhong City? Oh yes, he also severely humiliated Long Shi Jiandi's son, the sword spirit of the Ming Palace. It could be said to be Long Shi Jiandi's enemy. Until now, he was still a wanted criminal on the sword committee's list. How could such a person suddenly stand with Long Shi Jiandi and fight with Long Shi Jiandi against the flood-level Yuan Ko? With his small stature as a famous sword-level sword-bearer, perhaps he could not even resist a blow from the flood-level Yuan Ko. This made the audience somewhat confused. However, the battle footage shown on the TV had been edited. There is only one protagonist in these scenes. That was the stalwart Long Shi Jiandi and his sword lady. As for Gahan and the Pirate Sword Fairy, they could only occasionally appear in some corners of the screen, so the audience could not figure out what role Gahan played in the battle. As a result, there were more and more posts on the internet asking for the original unedited battle footage. Some local tycoons even offered a reward of hundreds of thousands of yuan to buy the original battle footage. However, the entire battle footage was tightly controlled by the London officials. No matter how much the local tycoons offered, there was no response. Just when a vast number of onlookers felt that it was very likely that they would never be able to see the unedited battle footage for the rest of their lives, a long-lost forum ID suddenly appeared on the forum of Sword Maiden Online. Along with this ID were 8 videos that were more than 600 gigabytes long. Unlike the style of this ID, which was desperate for money, this post was actually free and any audience could directly read it. The moment the audience saw this ID, many players of Sword Maiden Online were excited because this ID had once swept the entire Sword Maiden Online, and until now, no one had reached his level, Military Governor. But what made the players curious was why this military governor had released such a large battle footage. Could it be that the military governor had conquered some dungeon and released a dungeon tutorial? It was just that they heard the system broadcast saying that a dungeon record had been broken by the military governor. When the players who first discovered the post opened the video of the battle attached to the post, they sucked in a breath of cold air. What the Admiral had posted was actually the unedited battle footage of the Battle of London, which was the hottest topic on the internet. Countless tycoons were willing to spend a lot of money to purchase it, but they were unable to purchase the unedited battle footage of the Battle of London. What's more, the footage was taken from 8 different cameras. The original footage was unedited, and all the footage broadcasted by the television stations was edited from these 8 battle footage. Oh my God, the military governor is really amazing. It would have been fine if he didn't appear, but when he did, he created such a big news. The players let out a gasp of admiration. Most of the players immediately began to study the original battle footage, while others began to call their friends and post this exciting news on their respective social media platforms. Immediately, a large number of views began to flood into the forum of Sword Maiden Online and the post by the military governor. Even ordinary people who did not usually like to play games or even hated games and had never logged into a game forum before registered an account just to be able to watch the video posted in the post. In less than half an hour, the post went from 0 to 3 million views. 3 hours later, it reached 10 million views. Within a day, it broke through 30 million views. A week later, it broke through 60 million views. It became the 6th post to break through 50 million views since the opening of Sword Maiden Online. It was also the fastest post to break through 50 million views. Until a long time later, there were still many players who clicked on this post with a sense of pilgrimage to admire the glory of Gohan countless times. No one knew how many views this post would reach in the end. Anyway, even after 100 years, the lowest number of views of this post would still exceed 1,000 on a single day. After a rough look at the battle footage, there is something that must be said. 10 minutes after the post was posted, a player posted such a post. There was only one sentence in this post. His Majesty Dragon Sure is indeed a hero, but Gohan is even more of a hero. This was also the thought of many players who had watched the video. The players were surprised to find that the truth was not as the TV video had claimed. Dragon Sure Jindy was the absolute protagonist, while Gohan and the Pirate Sword Fairy were only supporting characters who fought with Dragon Sure Jindy. In fact, the only real supporting character was the Pirate Sword Fairy. Gohan was undoubtedly the second protagonist of the whole video. In some ways, it was not an exaggeration to say that Gohan was the first protagonist. The players naturally had their own reasons. It was true that the 3 flood level Yuan Ko had died under the sword of Dragon Sure Jindy. But if Gohan and the Pirate Sword Fairy had not restrained the other 2 flood level Yuan Ko, Dragon Sure Jindy would not have been able to kill Tesla so easily, especially after the 2 flood level Yuan Ko had completely unleashed their power of the rule. At that time, the Pirate Sword Fairy could not stop the flood level Yuan Ko, who had unleashed their power of the rule, and was beaten to the point of vomiting blood in just 2 or 3 moves. It was Gohan who had single-handedly blocked the 2 flood level Yuan Ko, who had unleashed their power of the rule, separating them from Tesla and being unable to help Tesla, who was in a desperate situation, which ultimately led to the defeat of the whole battle. There is no doubt that if it had not been for Gohan, Dragon Sure Jindy would not have been able to defeat and kill the 3 flood level Yuan Ko. It could be said that Gohan had made great contributions. Chapter 1242. As the saying goes, amateurs enjoy the show, while experts appreciate the artistry. Most of the audience's first reaction when they saw this video was that Gohan was so strong that he could actually block 2 hung-level Yuan Ko alone. But in the eyes of the elite swordsman players and the swordsmen in real life, it was even more difficult for them to accept that Gohan could actually release 2 sword ladies at the same time. What was even more ridiculous was that these 2 sword ladies were both spirit sword level sword ladies, and they were even more powerful than immortal sword level sword ladies. To put it bluntly, when those who knew swordsmen saw Gohan release two sword ladies at the same time, everyone instantly knelt down. This was not a joke, nor was there any exaggeration. These people really knelt down. In their minds, there was no such thing as a swordsman being able to release two sword ladies at the same time. They just felt that their minds were in a mess, as if they were about to explode, and all their common sense was blown away. To give a simple example, if one day we saw aliens coming, we might be very surprised, but we would never be so surprised that our worldview would explode. This was because humans have been watching all kinds of sci-fi movies and novels since childhood, and there were also all kinds of speculations about aliens on the internet. There were even some vivid and seemingly real alien stories. Therefore, humans have long accepted the existence of aliens in their minds. So, if one day aliens suddenly came to Earth, humans would not be too surprised. But if one day you suddenly found out that the husky in your house could talk and was using your mobile phone to fish for poi, you would definitely claw your hair into a hornet's nest and run out of the house like a madman, screaming that the husky had become a spirit or something like that. Since all the sword bearers were stunned for an average of 36 seconds after watching the video, unable to say a word, humans later called this dramatic event the 36 seconds of silence of the world. Later, there was a director who made this story into a movie, which achieved quite a good box office record. Compared to the storm among ordinary people, an even bigger storm was brewing among the swordsman group. Countless swordsmen had watched the video and repeatedly confirmed the authenticity of the video. The swordsman named Guhan did indeed have two sword ladies at the spirit sword level, and after they were released at the same time. All the swordsmen began to spread the news. They dialed every number in their communicators and told their brothers and friends with great excitement and enthusiasm that there was actually a swordsman in this world who had two sword ladies at the spirit sword level and could release them at the same time. In just 10 minutes, except for those swordsmen in areas where the quantum communication network could not reach, all the swordsmen fell into this news. Many swordsmen learned of this news when they were fighting with Yuan Ko. As a result, they began to stare blankly and were severely beaten by Yuan Ko. According to later statistics, there were even 3 swordsmen who died because of this, which made people speechless. Countless swordsmen called the Sword Committee Association, asking them to come forward and explain what had happened, why a swordsman could have 2 sword ladies of the same level, and they strongly demanded that the Sword Committee Association announce how to have 2 sword ladies of the same level. Good things could not be enjoyed alone. They must be shared with all the swordsmen. As a result, the Sword Committee Association also said that they were very confused and had no idea what had happened. After the higher-ups of the Sword Committee Association watched the video, they fell into a deep silence. After the silence, they immediately ordered their men to contact Gahan and ask Gahan to explain the matter in detail. But their men helplessly reported that Guhan's personal terminal had been destroyed. At this time, he was in a state where he did not have a personal terminal, so they could not contact him through conventional means. In desperation, the big shots of the Sword Committee Association could only call the London City Sword Committee and ask the London City Sword Committee to investigate Gahan face-to-face. The London City Sword Committee answered very quickly. They said that Gahan was now attending a banquet held by Longshur Jindi, and Longshur Jindi had personally issued an order that if Gahan did not want to meet, then no one was allowed to disturb Gahan. Otherwise, it would be against Longshur Jindi. Well, since Longshur Jindi had spoken, the big shots of the Sword Committee Association had nothing to say. No matter how powerful they were not as powerful as Longshur Jindi. And the only one who could directly talk to Longshur Jindi, Hao Hian Jindi, had fallen into a state of serious illness. In order to save his life, Hao Hian Jindi had entered a state of closed-door training. Unless Yanjing City was in danger of destruction, Hao Hian Jindi would never come out of closed-door training. As a result, the Sword Committee Association fell into a situation of being bullied on both sides. On one hand, there was a steady stream of questioning letters from the sword bearers, asking the Sword Committee Association to come forward and explain. On the other hand, the City of London ignored them, making the Sword Committee Association extremely passive. However, the Sword Committee Association did not know that Longshore Jindi was also very curious and was asking Gahan about the two Spirit Sword girls. After achieving this monstrous achievement, Longshore Jindi, who was in a good mood, held a banquet in the palace that night, inviting all the sword bearers above the Spirit Sword level in London, as well as some famous sword bearers of other levels, as well as some social celebrities. Everyone knew that this was Longshore Jindi's celebration banquet, and they also knew that after today, Longshore Jindi would completely replace Hao Ian Jindi and become a #1 Jindi in the human world, becoming the uncrowned king of the whole human world, and their city of London would also rise. At least, the land price of the city of London would double. At the beginning of the banquet, Longshore Jindi became the center of all the people. Everyone held up the wine glass in their hands and said congratulatory nonsense to Longshore Jindi, trying to have a drink with Longshore Jindi. Only Gahan and Lu Shihua, these two guys, shrank in the corner of the banquet, each slowly drinking the red wine in their glass, completely ignoring the chores outside. The Londoners originally did not like Gahan. Although Gahan's contribution to this big victory was indispensable, the Londoners still habitually threw away the role of Gahan and brought all the glory to Longshore Jindi. However, halfway through the banquet, Longshore Jindi, who was receiving the congratulations of the crowd, heard a prompt sound from his personal terminal, and a message entered Longshore Jindi's mind. Longshore Jindi's face immediately changed, and then he pushed aside the crowd and walked to Gahan with a smile. He took the initiative to stretch out his glass and said with a smile, "What's wrong, Brother Gahan? Won't you accompany me for a drink? Your Majesty is very busy. How can I disturb your Majesty?" Gahan said with a smile, but he had no intention of raising the glass in front of him, which made the other guests around extremely dissatisfied. Some of the grumpy guests were ready to teach Gahan a lesson. "What are you doing? Withdraw." Longshore Jindi glared at the guest behind him with dissatisfaction. "Your Majesty, this guy is too disrespectful to you. You personally proposed a toast to him, but he didn't even raise his glass. It's too much. I suggest that we throw him out, so that he won't be an eyesore here," a guest said very rudely. When Longshore Jindi heard this, he coldly snorted and said, "Fine, I'll stand here and not do anything. If any of you have the ability to throw him out, do it now, and I promise to give you a promotion." As soon as Longshore Jindi's voice fell, all the guests present suddenly went silent out of fear. What a joke. This was a freak who could resist 2 Hong level Yuan Ko. If Longshore Jindi did not make a move, even if they had great ability, there was no way they could throw Gahan out. Let me tell you, don't look at this world with your previous brains. How many years can I live? At most, it's only 20 or 30 years. Longshore Jindi looked around at all the people around him and said, "After 20 or 30 years, whose world will it be? Will it still be my world? Let me tell you, after 20 or 30 years, it will be the world of Brother Gahan. I can tell you that the word I is no longer Brother Gahan's way of addressing himself. Brother Gahan can already use the word I in advance. In the future, it will definitely be Brother Gahan's world. Gahan will certainly ascend the throne and become an emperor. And once Brother Gahan ascends the throne and becomes an emperor, he will certainly be able to cover the sky, and even I will be ashamed of my inferiority." Longshore Jindi scolded in a stern voice, "You idiots, the future Jindi is here, but you still don't know how to establish a good relationship with him, and you still want to throw him out. Are you all idiots?" Longshore Jindi reprimanded the guests until they were speechless, but in his heart, he was still somewhat unconvinced. However, these guests thought that what Longshore Jindi said was right. This Gahan's spirit sword level was already this high. If he were to ascend the throne and become an emperor, it would really turn the sky upside down. Thinking of this, the guest who had just reprimanded Gahan was suddenly scared to the point of sweating profusely. He quickly picked up his wine glass, walked over to Gahan's side, and said with an awkward smile on his face, "Lord Gahan, I hope that you, a person of great stature, will not remember the offense of this lowly person and let this lowly person off. You can leave. You're not the person who killed my father. Why would I want to take revenge on you?" Guhan waved his hand. The guest felt as if he had been pardoned. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and ran away. "You don't need to gather around here. Let me and Brother Guhan have a few words alone." Longshore Jindi opened his mouth. Even if the others didn't want to leave, they could only dejectedly leave. "What? You really don't want to drink a cup of wine from me to you?" Longshore Jindi once again raised his wine glass in front of Guhan. "How would I dare?" Guhan was not an untactful person, so he also raised the wine glass in his hand, slightly touched it with Longshore Jindi's, and then drained it in one gulp. "The person who announced it in the forum was you. That military governor was you." When Guhan had drained his wine, Longshore Jindi suddenly launched a sneak attack and asked in an inscrutable tone, "It's me." Guhan's answer was very straightforward. There was nothing to hide. Chapter 1243. Why did you do such a thing? Longshore Jindi's eyes suddenly became sharp. "Don't you know that you are tearing down my stage? Why can't I do that?" Guhan smiled. "Your Majesty, do I need to say more about who was the one who started this?" "Humph, the 3 Yuan-Kos were all killed by me, so the protagonist should naturally be me. Isn't this a fact?" Longshore Jindi continued to press. "Of course, Your Majesty is the well-deserved protagonist, and this is also a well-deserved fact. But aren't those videos that have been sent out the truth? Compared with Your Majesty's edited videos, my unedited videos are the most authentic facts." Guhan's tone was neither arrogant nor humble, without the slightest fear of Longshore Jindi. "You brat." Longshore Jindi stared at Guhan for a long time, 1,000 emotions flashing through his eyes, and finally turned into a burst of laughter. "You brat, you have pushed me into an alley. In the end, it seems that I have wronged you." "Ashamed, ashamed." Guhan cupped his fists towards Longshore Jindi. "I have no other choice. If I don't reveal my credit, I'm afraid that even if Longshore Jindi speaks for me to the Sword Committee, those guys from the Sword Committee will not let me off so easily. I have no choice but to reveal my contribution so that the Sword Committee won't talk too much nonsense. So that's how it is. It seems that I have wronged Brother Guhan." Longshore Jindi nodded again and again as he listened to Guhan's explanation. "By the way, I'm curious about something else. I've already collected all the recordings. Even the Sword Immortal Pirate wouldn't be able to get his hands on them. Brother Guhan, you're a stranger in London, so how did you get your hands on them?" A trace of haze flashed across Longshore Jindi's face. "In the end, who is secretly helping Brother Guhan? Guhan, you tell me, I will definitely thank him." "Your Majesty, do you think I will answer your question?" Guhan smiled. "You'd better answer me. Otherwise, all those who may have access to these videos will have to go home and take care of their children." Longshore Jindi's words were a very obvious threat. "I didn't want to say it, but I don't want to implicate the innocent, so I will speak frankly." Guhan sighed and said faintly, "In fact, no one disobeyed Your Majesty's orders and gave me, an outsider who had just arrived in London, the green light. The one who really helped me was not anyone, but Her Excellency Tomono Kakaze." "Tomono Kakaze? That's highest level of intelligence?" Hearing Guhan's answer, Longshore Jindi was surprised. He never thought that Guhan actually got the videos from Tomono Kakaze. "Impossible. I have encrypted these videos to SS level. How could Tomono Kakaze give them to you? Don't try to deceive me." Longshore Jindi said angrily. "It's all thanks to my disciple." Guhan touched Lu Shihua's little head and said lightly, "My disciple is also the head of the Sword Garret in Yuzhong City. During the battle, before Your Majesty encrypted these videos, she had asked Tomono Kakaze to record and copy them. By the time Your Majesty encrypted these videos, the backup of the videos had already been in the hands of my disciple. If Your Majesty doesn't believe it, you can check it. Her Excellency Tomono Kakaze still has a record. So that's how it is. It's really a good plan. You actually calculated this before the battle began." After listening to Guhan's explanation, Longsure Jindy sucked in a breath of cold air. In his heart, his vigilance towards Gahan increased by N levels. This guy was really terrifying. He had actually calculated everything that would happen later from the very beginning. Even the fact that he might use the videos to cover up the truth had been calculated. What was this guy's head made of? How could it be so terrifying? At the same time, Longsure Jindy had a faint idea. An idea that he would never want to go against Gahan again in this life. Otherwise, God knows where Gahan would secretly plot against him. After all, the current Gahan was no longer the little famous sword-bearer of 3 years ago. Now, Gahan was already a big shot that he couldn't look down on. Oh, there's no other way. After all, there are precedents. Gahan sighed and said somewhat helplessly, "Oh, precedents? What precedents? Where are the precedents?" Longsure Jindy's curiosity was immediately aroused by Gahan's words. "It's the current popular ancestor, Emperor Qin." Gahan smiled. "Your Majesty Longsure, you really don't know what happened in Shanghai past that year." "Of course, I don't know anything." Longsure Jindy's expression was serious, "but I know that Ing Zheng is by no means a good guy. I am standing on Brother Gahan's side." "Thank you very much, Your Majesty." Gahan raised his glass to Longsure Jindy. Longsure Jindy gave a hearty smile, and the two drank their wine at the same time. "There's one more thing. I hope Brother Gahan can answer me truthfully." Longsure Jindy glanced at Gahan's waist, which had nothing on it, and suddenly changed the subject. "Brother Gahan, where is your sword maiden?" "Oh, they said that they don't like this kind of hypocritical occasion, so they collectively ran to the street to go shopping. I didn't bring a sword maiden with me." Gahan explained with a smile. Then I asked Brother Gahan, "What level of sword bearer are you?" Longsure Jindy's eyes suddenly became sharp. "Your Majesty has a discerning eye. Can't you see that I am a spirit sword level sword bearer?" Gahan said with a smile, "I'm sorry, I really can't see that." Longsure Jindy's voice fell, and the personal terminal in his hand projected a photo. "This is concubine Qin Pin, Brother Gahan's ancient sword maiden. Moreover, she is an original sword maiden that has been discovered for the first time. Is this correct?" Longsure Jindy pointed to the photo of Qin Pin and asked. In this photo, Qin Pin was wearing a crocodile costume, holding a popsicle and eating hard, and around Qin Pin were some simple and plain dress bosses with helpless eyes. This was taken during the 8 Academies assembly, right? When Gahan saw this photo, he couldn't help but think back to 3 years ago, and a smile appeared on his face. "Yes, she is my ancient sword maiden, Qin Pin. I don't need to say much about her. I'm afraid that people all over the world have seen this concubine's photo in primary school textbooks. Concubine Etion, who used to belong to Jatian Jindy, is also the #1 sword maiden in the treasure sword level. Now, she is Brother Gahan's sword maiden. I remember that when I learned that Brother Gahan had synchronized Heavenly Sword, I was so surprised that I jumped out of bed." The photo of Heavenly Sword that Longsure Jindy took out made Gahan a little embarrassed, because it was a photo of Heavenly Sword drunk at the entrance of a bar, drooling and sleeping soundly. Someone must have taken a photo of Etion while she was drinking in Yuzhong City. "I've embarrassed myself in front of Your Majesty. Heavenly Sword is indeed my sword maiden. This is also something that everyone in the world knows." Gahan nodded and admitted it. "I don't know much about this sword maiden. She is also a native sword maiden that has appeared in the world for the first time. Moreover, Brother Gahan, you haven't reported to the Sword Committee, and you haven't appeared in front of the world many times. Therefore, I only know that she is called Juzi's sword. Based on the strength that she has displayed so far, she is at least one of the top 10 sword maidens." Longsure Jindy finally took out a photo of Juzi. However, this photo showed that Juzi was very small, and it had been taken at a distance of at least 500 meters. After all, Juzi had appeared in front of the world very few times. Even Longsure Jindy found it difficult to get a complete and clear photo. "Yes, Juzi is my sword maiden. Longsure Jindy, you are really resourceful. I have only mentioned the name Juzi to a few close friends, but Your Majesty actually knows about it." Gahan's words were equivalent to fart. Longsure Jindy was an emperor sword wielder. Unless Gahan had never mentioned Juzi's name to anyone, it would be a piece of cake for Longshore Jindy to find out. Well, Brother Gahan, it's good that you are willing to admit it. Longshore Jindy finally projected all 3 photos, and then pointed to the photos of Qingpin, Etion, and Juzi, and read them one by one. Ancient sword grade, treasure sword grade, famous sword grade, Brother Gahan sword maidens are all here. So the question is, how should we explain these 2 sword maidens? The photos of Qingpin and the other 2 were thrown out by Longshore Jindy, and 2 sword maidens who looked like twins were projected in front of Gahan. They were impressively the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword. I am very curious. Why does Brother Gahan have 2 sword maidens? Brother Gahan, are you now an Immortal Sword Greatsword wielder, or? Longshore Jindy did not finish his words, and just stared at Gahan very seriously. Of course, he could sense that the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword were only sword maidens of Spirit Sword grade, so he wanted Gahan to personally tell the truth. Your Majesty has already guessed it, so why bother asking me? Gahan smiled indifferently, and then stretched out his hands toward the window. A few seconds later, 2 crisp sounds of glass bursting could be heard. The glass windows of the banquet windows were broken into pieces, and the surrounding guests screamed in fright. Looking back, the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword were held in Gahan's hands at the same time, and then Gahan let them quietly float between himself and Longshore Jindy, and then said, "As your Majesty can see, these 2 sword maidens are Spirit Sword grade sword maidens, and are also my sword maidens. So you admit it. You have 2 sword maidens of Spirit Sword grade at the same time." The Dragon Lion Sword Emperor stood up abruptly, and the chair behind him was sent flying by the intense airflow. The guests who were startled by the broken windows were once again startled. "Yes, I have 2 sword maidens of Spirit Sword grade." As soon as Gahan's voice fell, the Execute Immortal Sword and the Extinguish Immortal Sword suspended in the air were released at the same time, and then coincidentally nestled in Gahan's bosom. Gahan swore to God that this last part was not arranged by Gahan. Chapter 1244. Gahan's voice was so loud that everyone in the banquet hall could hear it clearly. Therefore, all the guests turned to look at Gahan and Longshore Jindy, the 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens in Gahan's arms. In fact, these guests had already heard the news online, and knew that Gahan might have 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens. However, most of them would rather believe that their eyes were playing tricks on them, or that there was something wrong with the recording, or that someone else had released the sword maidens at the same time. In short, these people were unwilling to believe that Gahan had 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens. Until this moment, when Gahan personally hugged the 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens in his arms. These guests had no choice but to accept the fact that their worldview was blown away. How is it? I'm giving you face, right? At the same time, in Gahan's purple palace, Zhu Xian's playful voice rang out. Hugging 2 spiritual sword-level sword maidens at the same time in front of so many people, in front of an Emperor sword-level sword wielder. Isn't that very cool? Isn't that very honorable? What else could Gahan say? He could only agree. Let me tell you, my sister didn't want to cooperate with you even if you beat her to death, but thanks to my persuasion, she finally cooperated with me. Gahan, don't you think you should give us sisters some sort of reward? Zhu Xian continued to say. Gahan was puzzled. With Zhu Xian's temperament, how could it do something like throwing itself into someone else's arms? So it was the doing of Extinguish Celestial Sword. But Extinguish Celestial Sword had spent so much effort to convince her sister. What did she want? What reward do you want? Although the actions of the Immortal Exterminating Sword and the Immortal Extinguishing Sword were not part of his plan, it was undoubtedly much better than his original plan. It was also much more shocking. Therefore, it seemed natural for him to ask for some rewards. After all, he had to encourage subjective initiative. Well, you're not allowed to touch that little bitch for at least 3 months. What do you think? Zhu Xian said bluntly. Hey, who are you calling a bitch? You four sisters are all bitches. Before Gahan could say anything, Xianyuan took the initiative to refute. Humph! In the illusion, who was the one who took the initiative to push Gahan down? Let me tell you, I still have the HD recording of that time. If you don't admit it, then I'll play the recording in this Z-Fu, or I'll simply use an illusion to project it into this hall. I'll let everyone see how a little bitch like you seduce men. Zhu Xian said in an incomparably domineering manner. F***CK. This guy actually recorded it. A few black lines appeared on Gohan's forehead. It was true that the female lead in this video was Xianyuan, but the male lead was him. If this video was played in the form of an illusion, then he wouldn't be famous for his strength, but for the passionate news of love affairs. Even with his cold and indifferent personality, he couldn't accept this kind of thing. All right, just play it. I was just worried that no one would appreciate my beautiful body. If you play it, then let others see my beauty. I have nothing to be afraid of. What Gahan did not expect was that the Xianyuan sword was not to be outdone. It actually fought back. The two of them were arguing more and more fiercely, and the celestial extinguishing sword could cast an illusion at any time. Both of you shut up, Gahan shouted from within his Z-Fu, directly suppressing the voices of the celestial extinguishing sword and the Xianyuan sword. Lady Zhu Xian, I agree to your request. I promise not to touch the Xianyuan sword's body for 3 months. After reprimanding the two sword maidens, Gahan rushed to say this. It could be said that he first calmed Zhu down. After all, the recording was in Zhu hands. All right. When Zhu Xian heard this, his eyes immediately narrowed into slits as he happily replied. Surname Gu, what do you mean by this? Are you planning to abandon me after using me? Are you going to turn your back on me after eating my body? Hearing Gahan's decision, the Xianyuan sword was indignant on the spot and angrily questioned him. Please use your brain and think about it. Right now, I am only a spirit sword wielder, not even an immortal sword wielder. There is no way I can synchronize with you for 3 months. Since you can't synchronize with me, you can't appear as a sword maiden. Even if I want to touch your body, I can't. Why are you so angry? Gahan said helplessly. Ugh. The Xianyuan sword paused for a moment. In other words, Zhu request is for nothing? Even if you don't agree to it, you can't have sex with me. That's right. That's it. Gahan said. Ha! Zhu, you idiot. You actually made such a meaningless request. Wahaha! I'm dying of laughter. I'm dying of laughter. Xianyuan sword laughed heartily. This time, it was Zhu turn to be livid. Enough. You two have taken advantage of me. Shut your mouths. Let me deal with Master Dragon and Genie first. Under Gahan's suppression, Xianyuan sword and Zhu finally obediently shut their mouths. However, in the dark, Zhu and Zhu Xian both made their moves at the same time. Each pinched a soft piece of flesh on the back of Gahan's waist. The pain of giving birth instantly swept through Gahan's body, and what made Gahan's balls ache was that at this moment, Gahan had to maintain a smile. Brother Gahan, you don't look well. Did you wear out your body during the battle and need a rest? The dispute between the extinguished immortal sword and the Xianyuan sword seemed to be quite long, but in the Z-Fu, it was actually only a matter of a few seconds. However, Gahan's face had changed several times overnight, which made Longsure Jindy feel very strange. It's nothing, just a little tired. I'll be fine after a day of rest. Gahan conveniently separated the extinguished immortal sword and Zhu Xian from his arms, and let them sit on the sofa with a sneer on their faces. Only then did he respond to Longsure Jindy. It's good that you're fine. Longsure Jindy nodded. Brother Gahan, I'm afraid you don't know, but during this period of time, whether it's the public communication of our London City Sword Committee or the exclusive work communication, all of them were in a state of outage. At least 100,000 calls were made to the public communication number in the 8 major Bay cities, and there were also thousands of calls from the Sword Committee. Their questions can be summed up as 2. One is whether Brother Gahan has 2 spirit sword maidens or not. This question has just been answered by Brother Gahan, so I can reply to them. It's just that this second question, I would like to ask Brother Gahan to answer it. Longsure Jindy finally asked the question that he urgently wanted to know. Your Majesty, please speak frankly. As long as I can answer your Majesty's question, I will definitely tell you everything I know. Gohan bowed and said with an expression of, I will definitely cooperate with you. Then I would like to ask Brother Gohan, what method did you use in the end? Or did you have some kind of fortuitous encounter that allowed you to have two spirit sword maidens at the same time? Longsure Jindy waved his hand, and a sword chi barrier appeared behind Longsure Jindy, completely sealing off the space where he and Gohan were, and also completely blocking all the sounds coming from this small space. The guests outside could only curiously look at Longsure Jindy and Gohan, but they couldn't hear what the two of them were talking about. This. Gohan hesitated for a moment. This is my secret. Can I not answer it? Brother Gohan, what do you think? Longsure Jindy sneered. Brother Gohan, your intelligence is rare in the world. I'm afraid there are only a few sword bearers in the world who can compare with your wisdom. Brother Gohan, in your heart, you should be very clear about the answer to this question. When Brother Gohan shows the two spirit sword maidens to the world, Brother Gohan, you absolutely can't hide it anymore. Even if I don't ask you, the other sword bearers will ask you, and the sword committee will not let you go. Sooner or later, you have to say it. Really? Gohan also sneered. What if I don't say it? Will they issue me a joint arrest warrant of the 8 base cities? I don't think it's necessary. After all, the joint arrest warrant on me hasn't been canceled yet. When I was still a famous sword bearer, I was never afraid of this so-called arrest warrant, let alone now. If the elders of the Sword Committee are interested in continuing to play this game of cat and mouse, that's also very good. At worst, I'll be a mouse again and disappear in front of you for a few years. But after a few years, who the mouse is, who the cat is, that's hard to say. Brother Gohan, you have to be able to escape from here. Longsure Jindy coldly looked at the sword Maiden in his hand. Brother Gohan's ability is so high that it's rare in the world. Even I'm not sure that I can catch Brother Gohan. However, Brother Gohan is a bit too complacent. So much so that you may have forgotten that the reason why you were able to block the 2 flood level Yuanko today is because they were blocked by my dimensional wall and the void great array at the same time. They couldn't enter the void at all, which was why you were able to block them. As for now, as long as I open the void gate and lock Brother Gohan in, I'm afraid that no matter how high your ability is, Brother Gohan, you can only say sorry. A sharp light flashed through Longsure Jindy's eyes, a light that could pierce the void. Is this how your Majesty Longsure treats me? A meritorious minister? Gohan smiled. Longsure Jindy suddenly burst into laughter. Brother Gohan, you misunderstand. I'm already an Emperor Sword level swordsman. Even if I know the way you have 2 spirit sword level sword maidens, it is of no use to me. It is impossible for me to have a 2nd spirit sword level sword maidens. Why should I be a bad person and form an irreconcilable enmity with Brother Gohan and ruin the future strongest of our human race? I'm not the kind of person who doesn't know what's good for me. I will not do such a thing that makes my friends hate me and my enemies happy. Longsure Jindy waved his hand, and the surrounding sword chi barrier disappeared. I just want to remind Brother Gohan that not everyone in the human race is as righteous as I am, especially that Emperor Qin you just mentioned. He can do anything. Your Majesty doesn't have to worry about this. Sooner or later, I will settle accounts with Ing Zheng. As for other people besides Ing Zheng, if they dare to go against the righteousness of mankind, I don't mind getting rid of these black sheep from mankind. Gohan said coldly, AI, killing each other is the worst. I hope this day will never come. Longsure Jindy finished speaking and raised the wine glass in his hand for the 3rd time, and then facing all the guests around him, he loudly sang, Come, all of us raise our wine glasses and toast our Brother Gohan. Longsure Jindy opened his mouth. Although the other guests present were puzzled and didn't know what Longsure Jindy was playing at, but no one dared to go against Longsure Jindy's words. One after another, they raised the wine glasses in their hands. Just as all the guests were preparing to drink the wine in their glasses, a sudden unforeseen event once again interrupted the actions of everyone, including Long Shurjindi. Your Majesty the Sea Emperor, Little Long East Sea Dragon, King Ao Guan. Little Long West Sea Dragon, King Ao Run. Little Long North Sea Dragon, King Ao Chin. Little Long South Sea Dragon, King Ao Shun. Respectfully inviting Your Majesty the Sea Emperor to visit the Sea Imperial Palace and hold the Sea Emperor's Ascension ceremony 3 days later. At the same time, announce to the world that the four seas will celebrate together. The whole world shines with splendor. Boundless longevity. Chapter 1245. The internet had never been a quiet place. Once there was wind, only God knew how high the waves could reach, especially when two blockbusters exploded on the internet at the same time. While people were still immersed in the death of the three-flood level Yuan Ko and the biggest victory of mankind in decades, and shocked by Gahan's strength and the fact that Gahan had two spirit sword level sword ladies, an even heavier bomb exploded. The first to trigger this bomb came from the official platform of Yuzhong City, or to be precise, the Yuzhong City Sword Garrett public account that belonged to the official platform of Yuzhong City. Although it was the official platform of Yuzhong City, very few people paid attention to the Sword Garrett public account. Not to mention the residents of other cities. Even the citizens of Yuzhong City had no interest in this public account because this public account had not published any new articles for 3 years. The total number of fans of this public account had also decreased by more than 800,000 in the past 3 years. However, the total number of fans of this Sword Garrett public account was still 7 billion. After all, this was a public account that had been operating for more than 600 years, and dead people would not unsubscribe. So it had accumulated a total of 7 billion fans in the past 600 years. Only God knew how many of these 7 billion fans were still alive. On the 1st of January, 2012, this was the beginning of the most glorious period for the Yuzhong Sword Garrett's official account in the past 50 years. At 8:00 that night, the official account updated its first post after 3 years. It was titled, "Warmly Celebrating the Coronation of Lord Guhan, the Swordsman of Yuzhong City." In the first 10 minutes after the article was posted, it did not attract any attention. This was because the number of living fans of this official account was too small, and the number of living people who saw this article for the first time was less than 100. As a result, almost 99 out of these 100 people thought that the administrator of a Yuzhong Sword Pavilion's official account had gone mad and written this inexplicable article that was full of crazy words. However, to everyone's surprise, 10 minutes later, the official WeChat account of the Yuzhong Sword Committee reposted the article. Yuzhong City Sword Committee's official WeChat account was different from the Sword Garrett's, which had no one managing it. This official account had a dedicated management team in charge. Every day, they would release the latest orders from the Sword Committee. It was one of the main channels for Yuzhong City to understand the officials' movements. It had a total of more than 8 billion fans, of which more than 10 million were active. It was truly a top official account. When such a public account reposted Jiang's article, its influence became terrifying. Countless people in Yuzhong City saw the article for the first time, and after a brief days, the entire official public account was flooded with thousands of comments per minute. They only had one question. Is the management team of this public account out of their minds? Has Shirleji lost his mind? Or was he suffering from mental illness? Why would he publish such an inexplicable and nonsensical article? Seeing the questioning from the fans, the management team of the official account also expressed that they were very confused. This was because they didn't know about this matter from beginning to end. They themselves also felt that the article was full of nonsense. However, they couldn't do anything because this article was reposted with the highest authority on the official account. There was only one person with the highest authority on the official account, and that was the chairman of the Yuzhong City Sword Committee, Sword Immortal Ling Su. In this regard, the management team could only stare at it and urgently send a letter to Sword Immortal Ling Su for instructions. They soon received a reply. Sword Immortal Ling, Su only replied with one sentence. Don't worry about anything. Just when the citizens who saw the article reposted by the Yuzhong City Sword Committee were still in a daze, an even more shocking situation occurred. The two people with the highest authority in Yuzhong City simultaneously used the authority of the Sword Garret Master and the authority of the Sword Committee to push this article to the entire city. They directly pushed it to the personal communications of every Yuzhong City citizen. They pushed it twice. This time, it was impossible for the people of Yuzhong City not to see this article, even if they didn't want to. Of course, at first glance, all the citizens of Yuzhong City thought that the author of this article was crazy. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas actually jointly promoted a Sea Emperor, and this Sea Emperor was not a member of the True Dragon Clan, but a human. He was their former Sword Garret Master, Gahan. This simply made the brains of the citizens of Yuzhong City explode. Moreover, this article was also extremely nonsensical. It said that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas greatly admired Gahan's strength, that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were deeply impressed by Gahan's personality and charisma, that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas decided to abandon their previous neutral attitude and mobilize the power of the entire Sea Tribe to help the human race. At the same time, they elected Gahan as the Sea Emperor to rule the Four Seas and become the common ruler of the human race and the Sea Tribe. What kind of joke was this? For hundreds of years, although the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas had maintained a neutral attitude, the number of ordinary humans and sword bearers who died in the hands of the Sea Tribe added up to more than 1 million. The Sea Tribe had always maintained a considerable distance from the human race. How could the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas suddenly change their attitude and promote a human as the Sea Emperor? They even said that they would risk giving all the power of the True Dragon Clan to the human race. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. Even the Koreans of the past did not dare to brag like this. Such an article made people feel as if the United States had suddenly announced that it would voluntarily become a province of Huaxia, offering all its technological, industrial, and financial power to Huaxia. From now on, the United States and Huaxia would be one family, and everyone could live happily together. This was simply nonsense to the extreme. Even if such an article was posted on a slightly more authoritative public account, the citizens would not believe a word of it. However, the problem was that this article was jointly sent to them by the Yuzhong Sword Garret and the Sword Committee. With the two most authoritative public accounts in Yuzhong, even if the citizens felt that this article was extremely ridiculous, they could not help but want to believe it. Soon, this article spread from Yuzhong City to other Bay cities. The citizens of other Bay cities also saw this article through the sharing of their friends. Compared to the people of Yuzhong City who were skeptical, the people of other Bay cities were very straightforward. They straightforwardly said that Liu Shihua must be crazy or that the management rights of the public account had been stolen. In any case, this could not be true. It was all nonsense. However, half an hour later, something happened that slapped them in the face. At 8:30 p.m. on January 1st, 2012, the official public account of the London Sword Garret reposted the article of the Yuzhong Sword Garret and added a thumbs-up emoticon in front of the article. This caused the Londoners who originally firmly denied the authenticity of this article to gradually fall for it. Just 3 minutes later, the official public account of the London Sword Committee also reposted the article of the Yuzhong Sword Garret and added 2 words at the same time, "Awesome." Although these 2 public accounts did not promote this to all the citizens, it was no longer necessary. Almost all the citizens began to read this article online and then felt that their worldview had been blown up for the 3rd time in a day. To have their worldview blown up 3 times in a day was probably something that they would never experience in their lifetime. At the same time, when the 2 authoritative public accounts of London also came out to confirm the matter, the authenticity of this article was greatly improved. About 30% of the people began to believe that this article was true. The authoritative leader of a Bay city could lose his mind, but it was impossible for the authoritative leaders of 2 Bay cities to lose their minds at the same time. What's more, there was also Long Shur Jindi, who had just fought side by side with Gahan. In this matter, Long Shur Jindi obviously had the first say. At 8:45 p.m., the two official public accounts of Jerusalem Bay City reposted this article at the same time, which also represented the arrival of a tsunami. At 8:47 p.m., the two official public accounts of Moscow Bay City reposted it at the same time. At 8:51 p.m., the two official public accounts of Berlin Bay City reposted it at the same time. At 8:52 p.m., the two official public accounts of Los Angeles Bay City reposted it at the same time. At 8:52 p.m., the two official public accounts of Buenos Aires Bay City reposted it at the same time. At 8:55 p.m., the two official public accounts of Yanjing, the last of the 8 major Bay cities, reposted this article at the same time. At the same time, the official public account of the Sword Committee also reposted it. This meant that all the official authoritative camps of human beings had confirmed the authenticity of this article. So the authenticity of this article was beyond doubt. This article was not the crazy talk of a madman, but a true fact. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were indeed going to let a human sit on the throne of the Sea Emperor. The whole internet was in an uproar. It was almost bedtime, but most netizens could not fall asleep. They were discussing frantically on the internet about what had happened in the past few hours. They were discussing what had happened between humans and the Sea Clan. Did they carry out some unspeakable PY transactions or something like that? It was a pity that no matter how heated the discussion on the internet was, it was just a group of people's imagination. In addition to reposting this article, the official public accounts of the major Bay cities did not release any other news, so the whole thing was shrouded in a fog. People could only pay attention to the public account of the Yuzhong Sword Garret, which had published the article in the first place. They wanted to see if this long-silent public account could release any news that would shock the netizens again. With the continuous attention of the newcomers, the number of fans of the Yuzhong Sword Garret began to rise crazily for the first time in 50 years. In just 2 hours, the number of fans increased by 30 million, and the total number of fans exceeded 7 billion to 8 billion. It was the craziest single-day increase since the Yuzhong Sword Garret's official account was launched, creating an unprecedented history. Unfortunately, the Sword Garret's official account remained silent for the next 4 hours. Just when netizens felt that there would be no more results today and were ready to go back to sleep and wait for the news tomorrow, the Yuzhong Sword Garret's official account published the second article at midnight on January 2nd. The coronation ceremony will be held in the Sea Palace in 3 days. The official list of attendees of the ceremony is hereby announced. It turned out that the Yuzhong Sword Garret's article was mainly a list of names, mainly listing the list of attendees of the coronation ceremony. Among them, the name at the top was Long Shur Jindi's name, followed by a long list of immortal sword bearers and some top figures in society. Except for Hao Hian Jindi, who did not show up as usual, almost all the big shots and giants of mankind appeared on this list. However, netizens quickly noticed that the name of Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng was not on this list. This was a very strange thing. It should be known that this ancestor of mankind, who had lived for thousands of years, suddenly appeared in front of the public. He was very keen to appear on various occasions. In just a year and a half, almost all humans had known the story of Yingzheng, and Yingzheng's diehard fans had reached tens of millions. He could be said to be a celebrity in the human world, second only to the 2 emperor swordbearers. However, such a well-known figure did not appear on the list of the coronation ceremony, which made netizens feel very curious and strange. However, in addition to the list, this second article also leaked some other information. For example, the authenticity of the matter had been confirmed once again, and the grand coronation ceremony would be held in 3 days. At the same time, including the official media of 8 major Bay cities and a private media, a total of 9 media outlets had obtained the special live broadcast rights, becoming the only media that could enter the Sea Palace to broadcast the coronation ceremony live. At that time, all questions could be answered in the live broadcast 3 days later. Although the news had been announced, the waves did not subside. Instead, the waves were getting higher and higher. The news that Longsure Jiandi had killed 3 Hong-level Yuan co-warriors had been completely suppressed by the name of Gahan. People were no longer interested in discussing Longsure Jiandi's great achievements. They wanted to know who this Gahan was. Just how powerful was he? How did he become the Sea Emperor, respected by the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas? These 3 questions deeply tortured the nerves of the vast number of netizens. They were eager to know the answer to this question. The first question seemed to be easy to answer. After all, Gohan's information could be found in the Sword Committee's database of sword bearers. It could also be found in the official website of Yuzhong City. However, the information was very simple and rough, and could not be used to understand Gahan in detail. Therefore, netizens who were good at collecting information quickly sorted out the most detailed information about Gahan that ordinary people could know so far. Gahan, male, born on July 6, 2990. When he was 6 years old, he experienced the Great Attack of Yuzhong City. His parents died tragically, and his life after that was unknown. After reaching the age of 18, he participated in the synchronization of the ancient sword Maiden and obtained the original sword Maiden that had never appeared before, the Qingpin sword. Later, he encountered Medusa in the wild and was seriously injured. Coincidentally, he was accepted as the last disciple by the late former sword pavilion master of Yuzhong City. At the same time, he became a sword bearer of the treasure sword tier. He successfully synchronized with the strongest sword maiden, the heavenly sword, and became the 3rd sword bearer in 1,000 years. At the same time, he represented Yuzhong City in the first Changyang Mountain trial and won, receiving the reward left by Zhetian Jiandi. When he returned, Yuzhong City was attacked 4 years ago. He led less than 100 sword bearers to recapture the Yang fortress and receive the defeated sword bearers of Yuzhong City. Finally, he snuck back to Yuzhong City and led the remaining sword bearers as the sword pavilion master. Finally, when the reinforcements arrived, he cooperated with the 9-heaven sword deity to kill the U-level Yuan Ko Loki and successfully defended Yuzhong City. Later, he was tried by the Discipline Commission for Discipline Inspection for killing an ordinary person in a fit of righteous indignation. Although he was acquitted, Gahan was filled with righteous indignation and passed the position of Sword Pavilion Master to his disciple, Lu Shihua. At that time, Lu Shihua was just an ordinary person, so one could imagine Gahan's boldness and temper. Later, he represented Yuzhong University in the 8 Academies tournament and defeated all the sword bearers of the so-called Golden Generation, including Liuyan Ling, the direct descendant of the Liuyan family, and became the champion of the 8 Academies tournament. Later, because of the Shanhai Pass riot, he was urgently dispatched to Shanhai Pass and cooperated with Qin Shi Huang Ying Zheng to kill all the great sorcerers. After that, he guarded Shanhai Pass for 3 years. In the end, because he resisted the order of the Sword Commission to continue guarding Shanhai Pass, he fought with the sword spirit of Gui Temple, who came to stop him. Immediately, the Sword Commission issued a joint arrest order for the 8 base cities and disappeared without a trace in the next few months. Today, he appeared outside London and assisted Longsure Jiandi in killing Guan Yu, Tesla, and Temujin, the 3 flood-level Yuan Ko Loki. In addition, the sisters Gu Shirhan and Gu Xinyuan are Gu Han's biological sisters, and they also have terrifying strength. However, the sisters are extremely mysterious, and no one can find any relevant information about them. Chapter 1246. It had to be admitted that although the content of this profile was not much, and there were many missing parts, some key events were correct, and it could describe Gahan's life in more detail. This profile quickly spread throughout the internet, and countless netizens carefully studied it over and over again. Finally, they came to the conclusion that, in terms of personal experience, this Gahan was really awesome. Except for the experience of his parents dying at the beginning, the rest of his experience was something that 9,999% of human beings couldn't do. In terms of achievements, This Guhan's achievements had surpassed 99% of the sword bearers in the world. As for his strength, it was still unknown, but he was definitely one of the top fighting forces of human beings. Therefore, whether it was talent or ability, Guhan was a veritable powerhouse. It was somewhat reasonable for such a person to become a candidate for Sea Emperor. It was just that the majority of netizens still couldn't understand how the position of Sea Emperor could fall on a human's head. Moreover, the position of Sea Emperor should not be decided by strength. Otherwise, the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas could directly invite Long Shurjindi to be Sea Emperor. Why did they choose this Guhan who suddenly appeared out of nowhere? Since they could not find any more answers from the biographies, some of them went back to the videos and began to study them carefully without missing a single detail. They also found some high-leveled sword-wielding friends to investigate and ask questions. In the end, someone posted a thread on the forum titled, "How Scary is Solid Cold?" A detailed analysis of the Battle of London video. This post first analyzed Guhan's level and confirmed that Guhan was undoubtedly a spirit sword level sword bearer. Then it analyzed the stage where the 3 flood level Yuan Ko hadn't used the rule power, and Guhan and the pirate sword immortal each resisted a flood level Yuan Ko. The original poster took a lot of screenshots, all of which were screenshots of Guhan's expressions. He pointed out that Guhan's expression was very relaxed at this stage, without any expression of embarrassment, indicating that such a battle was very simple for Guhan and would not cause Guhan any trouble. At the same time, he also took a video of the battle, and then analyzed it frame by frame, showing that Guhan's swordsmanship had reached an unpredictable stage. No matter how the opponent attacked, it was impossible to break free from Guhan's sword net. He also went to find a video of the battle of the Wanmi sword spirit, who is known as the number 1 Kinzu. Similarly, by comparing it frame by frame, he came to the conclusion that Guhan's swordsmanship was far superior to the Wanmi sword spirit. He could be called the number 1 sword master of mankind. In terms of swordsmanship, Guhan was already the undisputed number 1 in the human world. Then there was the stage where the rule power was activated. The original poster pointed out that the pirate sword immortal gave his opponent to Guhan the first time the rule power was activated. Because the pirate sword immortal couldn't fight against Guan Yu, who was using the rule power, but Guhan was able to resist Guan Yu, and he was still the number 1 sword master of mankind. In terms of swordsmanship, Guhan was already the indisputable number 1 in the human world. The original poster concluded, "This is no longer a stage that ordinary swordsmanship can reach." The original poster concluded, "I asked a fairy sword master who didn't want to reveal his name. He told me that only rule power can resist rule power. This means that this Guhan can already use rule power that only Emperor sword wielders can use when he's a spirit sword level sword wielder." I also asked this fairy sword master, "Has there been anyone else in history who has reached such a stage?" This master thought for a long time, and finally, with some hesitation, told me that Master Kinzu must have reached this stage back then, and Jatian Jindi may have also reached this stage. He couldn't be sure about the other sword wielders, but there was most likely no 4th person. So we can come to this conclusion. Guhan's talent has already reached the level of Kinzu and Jatian Jindi. However, the above is not the main point of this post. Compared to what I'm going to announce next, the previous content of the post becomes worthless. At this point in the post, the original poster used thousands of ellipses and exclamation marks to express his inner shock. At the same time, he also divided the post into 2 parts. What I want to tell everyone is that this Guhan has 2 sword maidens. Readers may be wondering, what's wrong with a sword wielder having 2 sword maidens? Don't sword wielders at treasure sword level have 2 sword maidens? But that's not the case because Guhan has 2 spiritual sword maidens at the same time. Yes, you haven't seen it. Guhan has 2 spiritual sword maidens of the same level. Everyone has read books when they were young, regardless of whether it's textbooks or casual books, even those illusory street stalls. These books only boast about how awesome and powerful the sword wielder is, But no author has ever dared to say that a sword wielder has two sword maidens of the same level, because in the minds of these authors, this is an impossible thing. It can even be called the Arabian Nights. But now, this Arabian Nights has come true. Guhan has used an undeniable fact to tell us that a sword wielder can have two sword maidens of the same level. Ordinary people may not know what this means. I'll give you an example. All my sword wielder friends around me are almost going crazy. There's only one topic they're discussing, and that's Guhan, and how Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens. The popularity of this topic has always been maintained at the highest state. Even the announcement of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas to jointly elect Guhan as Ocean Emperor 12 hours ago did not break the popularity of this topic. What the sword wielder is most concerned about is how Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens. This original poster wrote a lot more content, but in summary, they all had the same meaning. It was used to show how incredible it was for Guhan to have two spiritual sword maidens at the same time, how magical it was, and how it broke humans' worldview. He wrote this at the end of the post. In this way, the author can't help but make such a conjecture. The reason why Guhan can be evenly matched with flood-level Yuan Ko as a spiritual sword-level sword wielder, the reason why he can master the power of rules at spiritual sword level, and even the reason why he can be elected as Ocean Emperor by the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, is because Guhan has two spiritual sword maidens at the same time. This is the reason for all unscientific events. Any unscientific results can only be found by using unscientific reasons. Finally, I like to say that the above is the author's personal conjecture. It doesn't represent the actual situation, but the author might as well say something now as the truth. Guhan's strength has reached an indisputable level. If there's no accident, Guhan will become the same as Jitian Jindi and Gujin Jindi, the leader of the new generation of human beings, and also the most powerful sword wielder. What's more frightening is that Guhan is only 22 years old now. If he doesn't die halfway, Guhan can generally live to 80 years old. In other words, in the future, human beings will be shrouded in the shadow of Guhan for 60 years. We can kneel down and shout long, "Live His Majesty Guhan" in advance. Finally, I'd like to say, Sword Committee, don't forget that Guhan's joint arrest order of the 8 base cities is still there. You'd better remove this arrest order as soon as possible. Otherwise, I don't know where your old face will go. This analysis post spread on the internet at shocking speed. Soon, netizens who were extremely interested in Guhan saw this analysis post and were shocked. They studied this analysis post like it was a textbook and said that the original poster was right. In the future, they could shout His Majesty Guhan. After a series of events, Guhan's reputation was pushed to the peak among humans. They thought that Guhan could rule for 60 years and become the next Jitian Jindi. There was a lot of discussion about how strong Guhan was. Most netizens thought that Guhan's strength was at least equivalent to a top immortal sword wielder. A small group of netizens thought that Guhan's strength was already comparable to an emperor sword wielder. There was also a small group of netizens who shouted that Guhan was invincible. They thought that Guhan was now the #1 person in the human world. They thought that Guhan could beat the Hall of Valor, kick the Heavenly Court, and lead humans to completely end this chaotic era. Looking at the whole discussion, no one thought that Guhan's strength was at the level of a spirit sword wielder. Just what is our solid cold doing when all this clamor is going on? In fact, our Guhan was having a terrible headache because Guhan's temporary residence had become a pot of porridge. Other than Juzi, who still stood quietly beside Guhan, all the sword ladies were in a state of quarrel. And our Miss Qingpin was standing on Guhan's head, screaming loudly with her Lolita voice. If it wasn't for Guhan's sword chi barrier that sealed all the sound waves, it was likely that the surrounding residents would take out their weapons and look for Guhan to settle the score. How could they let people sleep at night? As for the reason for the quarrel, it was very simple, and that was the problem of Guhan's title. After this battle, Guhan's name had become known in the world. Everyone knew that Guhan was already a spirit sword wielder, So a crucial problem immediately appeared. Gohan had to confirm his title as soon as possible and then register it at the Sword Committee headquarters. Otherwise, the enthronement ceremony in 3 days would become very awkward. Confirming the title was a matter of course. After every sword wielder became a spirit sword wielder, they would have their own title. For example, Jitian from Jindi, Longshur from Longshur Jindi, Huomi from Huomi Sword Spirit, Yun Xiao from Yun Xiao Sword Immortal. These were all their titles. Moreover, when addressing others, others would generally call you by your title instead of calling you by your name. Otherwise, it would be very impolite and disrespectful to the sword wielder. In this world, there is only one person who had surpassed the spirit sword level without a title, and that was the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor. The Flowing Year Sword Ancestor did not have any title. The name of the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor was given to him by his descendants. When the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor was alive, everyone called him by his surname. If someone dared to give the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor a title, they would definitely be cursed by the Flowing Year Sword Ancestor. But what was strange was that the title was invented by Kinzu, and the first title in the world was also named by Kinzu. The entire title system was mostly established by Kinzu, but Kinzu didn't use any title in his life. It was indeed a bit strange, but Kinzu was Kinzu. All the strangeness of Kinzu was so reasonable. After all, great people always had some eccentricities. So after the banquet, people from the London City Sword Committee came to find Gohan on behalf of the Sword Committee HQ and told Gohan that he had to give himself a title within 12 hours. Otherwise, the Sword Committee HQ would help Gohan choose a title. Even an idiot would know that with the current terrible state of the Sword Committee HQ and Gohan, the Sword Committee HQ would definitely not give Gohan a good title. In fact, what Gohan didn't know was that if the news of Poseidon hadn't been announced, the Sword Committee HQ would have already given Gohan a title. It was a title that would make everyone laugh. In the end, because of the appearance of Poseidon's title, the Sword Committee HQ, who still had a bit of rationality, did not announce their title. Instead, they hid it deep in a wooden box, and no one mentioned it again. Many years later, when the Sword Committee headquarters moved from Yinjing City to Hongjun City, this wooden box was discovered by the later generations. Only then did the later generations know how despicable the people of the Sword Committee headquarters were at that time, and how annoying the title was for Gohan. The naming rights of the title returned to Gohan's hands. For a moment, Gohan was at a loss. During this period of time, he was either fighting or scheming, so much so that Gohan completely forgot about the title. Gohan didn't know what to do when he was suddenly brought up by the Sword Committee today. He couldn't think of a title to give himself at the moment. If it was possible, Gohan wanted to directly name his title Gohan. That would be so much simpler and better. It was a pity that since ancient times, there had never been a sword wielder who would use their own name for a title. Although Gohan did not stick to a single pattern, he still felt that it was very awkward when he thought about it carefully. So he gave up. It was Gohan's fault. He couldn't think of a satisfactory title. So he threw this problem to Chi Dian and let it think for him. Chi Dian's reaction was very fast. In a blink of an eye, it put its body into Gohan's arms. The soft body with the fragrance of meat couldn't help but make Gohan a little restless. While Chi Dian teased Gohan's body, it said in a sweet voice, "Gohan, how about this? Your title will be called Chi Dian. Chi Dian Sword Spirit. It sounds so nice and poetic." "Oh, that's fine too." Gohan nodded thoughtfully. Sword Spirit of Chi Dian sounded like a pretty good title. But before Gohan could say another word, a body bomb fell from the sky and hit Gohan's face hard. Together with a small, milky panty, a small, fragrant panty, it smeared on Gohan's face. "No, Gohan, how can you give yourself such a title?" Qingpin overheard the conversation between Gohan and Chi Dian, so it jumped on Gohan's face and used its panty to slap Gohan's face. Then it sat on Gohan's neck and said, "What Chi Dian Sword Spirit? It doesn't sound good at all. Qingpin Sword Spirit sounds better." It's obvious that Gohan is Qingpin's sword wielder, and Qingpin is Gohan's sword mother. This is the best title. Good my ass. What kind of swordsman would call his title poor? Dian, whose plan was interrupted by Pin, immediately jumped up and objected. Pin, do you want Gahan to live with the two words Pin for the rest of his life? Will he be laughed at and called a pauper? What's wrong with Pin? Pin is so cute, so Pin should be called Pin. Pin cried and made a fuss. His loud voice immediately attracted the attention of the other sword maidens. Therefore, other than Juzi and Shui, all the sword maidens began to make a fuss, saying that Gahan must use his own name for his title, especially Jueshian, whose voice surpassed all the other sword maidens. She looked like she was going to poke a few holes in Gahan's body if Gahan didn't use Jueshian as his title. Chapter 1247. I'm Guhan's first sword maiden, and I'm his rightful wife. I sleep with Guhan every night, so this title should be named after me. Do you have any objections? Jian took the initiative to attack. She spoke with the aura of an empress. Nonsense. Pin is Guhan's first sword maiden. Pin protested. Also, Pin sleeps with Gahan at night. She sleeps with Gahan much more than you do. Pin should be Gohan's title. Pervert. You sleep with a kid like Pin every night. Zhu Xian looked at Gahan in disdain after hearing Pin's words. You're overthinking it. I put Pin in my room every night, but she always shows up on my bed the next day and shoves her feet into my mouth. I can't do anything about it. Gahan explained with a bitter smile. Isn't it just sleeping? I've slept with Gahan too. This title should be mine. Xian Yuan's sword floated in the air and muttered. She was the only sword maiden who didn't have her own female form. She could only speak in her original form. Come on, you're not Gahan's sword maiden yet. How dare you fight for Gahan's title? Jueshian slapped Xian Yuan's sword away and said loudly, I think we should use my sisters and my name as the title. Sword Spear Slayer. It sounds so nice. What's so nice about it? Killing and severing. People would think that our family's Guhan is an assassin. Jian rolled its eyes and pulled Juzi's arm. How about this? Let's call him Sword Spirit of Orange. It sounds so nice. You're all in a group, aren't you? When Etian saw this, he immediately pulled Pin into his arms and announced loudly, Then Pin and I will be together, and we'll be called the Pure Heaven Sword Spirit. Yes, this Pure Heaven Sword Spirit is not bad. Much more reliable than the Sword of Extinction Sword Spirit and the Orange Sword Spirit. Hearing this, Gahan couldn't help but nod. This Clear Heaven Sword Spirit was probably the most pleasing title Gahan had heard so far. Then we'll call ourselves the Fish and Water Sword Spirits. In the end, Douyu had no choice but to pull past Water Sword, who didn't want to participate in the battle, and formed a group with past Water Sword. As a result, the original battle situation became a battle between pairs. The sword ladies huddled together and started a new round of quarrels. As the battle situation became more and more intense, the passing Water Sword and Juzi Sword that did not intend to join the battle were abandoned by their teammates. Douyu Sword and Dian Sword reunited to form the Raindrop Sword Spirit. TSK. The battle situation could be said to be unprecedentedly tragic. Faced with this situation, Gahan was helpless. He never thought that a title would cause his sword ladies to quarrel to this extent. Every sword lady wanted Gahan to use their own name as the title. If it was possible, Gahan wanted to smooth things over. For example, he could choose a word from each sword lady's name as his own title. However, the problem was that Gahan currently had 9 sword ladies. If he chose a word from each of them, it would probably be called Clear Water Sword Spirits, Juzi Sword Spirits. Well, if this title was made known to others, Gahan would be the first to go crazy. Since ancient times, titles had always been 2 words. Gahan didn't want to be unconventional on this point. All right, all of you give up. I won't use your names as my titles. Even an idiot could tell that if Gahan used one of the sword ladies' names as his title, Gahan would completely offend all the other sword ladies. Therefore, Gahan would never do such a thing. Bastard. If you don't want to use our names as your title, you should have said so earlier. We almost got into a fight. Don't ruin the harmony between us sisters." Hearing Gohan's words, the arguing sword ladies said in unison. However, Gohan was so embarrassed that he could only smile bitterly. "How about this? I won't be biased. Each of you can think of a title that has nothing to do with your name and give it to me. I'll put it in a secret box and use the title of whoever draws it. That's the fairest way. What do you think?" In desperation, Gohan could only use this method that seemed the smartest, but was actually the stupidest. Everything would be decided by the heavens. "Okay, that's a good idea," the sword ladies said in unison. In reality, the sword ladies were only fighting to prove their position in Gohan's heart. However, they would never get a result if they continued to fight like this. It was better to leave everything to the heavens. That way, no one would gain an advantage. "I'll give you 5 minutes. Each of you write your name on this poker card and put it in this box." Gohan took out 9 poker cards and a box and distributed the poker cards. As for Xin Yuan's sword, which could not transform into a sword lady, Gohan asked Juzi to write it for Xin Yuan. The fastest one was Juzi. In just 10 seconds, Juzi handed the poker card to Gohan. Gohan took a look and his eyes lit up. "Chaos Sword Spirit. This is a good title. Since the sword art I created is called Chaos Sword Art, it's great that my title is Chaos." Seeing this title, Gohan patted Juzi's head happily. Although he really wanted to use this title called Chaos, since he had promised the other sword maidens to draw it, Gohan had no right to go back on his words. He had no choice but to put the poker card into the box and pray that it would be drawn out. "I've written it too." To Gohan's surprise, the second one to hand in the paper was Doyu. This little guy's handwriting was not bad. Although it was a little immature, it was better than the writing of his peers. Heaven Fighting Sword Spirit. Gohan looked at the title written on the poker card and thought it was a good title. His whole life was the process of fighting against heaven. "Well, I can draw this title too." Xin Yuan's sword was the one to hand in the paper after Doyu. On this poker card, written by Juzi, there were 2 extremely arrogant words: Human Sovereign Sword Spirit. "What do you think? Isn't it domineering?" "It's awesome," Xin Yuan's sword said proudly. "Let me tell you, Gohan, you must have the domineering aura of a human sovereign. All the humans in the world will belong to us, and all the beauties in the world will also belong to us. When the time comes, we'll split the beauties in half. By the way, I only like beauties with big breasts. Those flat-chested Lolas will belong to you." "Belong to you, my ass." Gohan flicked the blade of Xin Yuan's sword with force. The title of human sovereign sounded very domineering. If Gohan ascended to the throne and became an emperor sword-level sword wielder, no one would dare to stop him from using this title. But now, he was only at spirit sword level. It was estimated that Long Shur Jindi, who lived not far away, would be the first to object, unless he, Long Shur Jindi, was willing to be led by Gohan. Kill Sword Spirit. Kill Sword Spirit again. The 4th and 5th to hand in the paper were Kill Immortal Sword and Extinguish Immortal Sword. As a result, the titles they proposed were exactly the same. Moreover, they continued the titles that they had decided during the quarrel. When Shi Jian and the other sword ladies raised their objections, Extinguish Immortal Sword said eloquently, "This title of Kill Sword Spirit was not the name of any sword lady, and it was not within the scope of Gohan's restrictions. Of course, it could be used normally. Moreover, Gohan did not prohibit 2 sword ladies from proposing the same title. Therefore, all their actions were within the scope of the rules. It was a correct and legal action. The other sword ladies could not win against these 2 cunning guys. They could only let the other side put the playing card room with Kill Sword Spirit written on it into the box. That's it. Extinguish Immortal Sword shook its fist. In this way, the probability of Kill Sword Spirit being chosen was 2 to 9, which was the highest probability of the title. "Gohan, how do you write the word love?" Suddenly, Qingpin raised his head and asked Gohan. In the end, Gohan saw a little face that had been painted black. Qingpin did not know how to write at all. Not only did he get his hands covered in ink, he even rubbed the ink on his face. In the end, He looked like a little mud man. The playing card was also covered in ink. The word Qingpin was written crookedly on it. However, Qingpin did not seem to know how to write the word love, so he raised his head and asked Gahan in distress, "Do you want to add the word love in the front or the back?" Gahan asked Qingpin with a bitter smile. "In the front. In the front." Qingpin raised his hand and flung the ink on Gahan's face. "So you wanted to call it Love Sword Spirit?" Gahan smiled even more bitterly. What was this? Love Sword Spirit? If Gahan took this title, his reputation would probably be completely ruined. However, a gentleman's words could not be taken back. Although his heart was extremely resistant, Gahan finally found a new playing card and wrote the words Love Sword Spirit on it for Qingpin. Under the supervision of a silly smile on Qingpin's face, he put the playing card into the box. Qingpin and I are good sisters. Seeing that we often drink together, I'll make it the same as Qingpin. Perhaps seeing the bitter smile on Gahan's face, Etian, who had always harbored ill intentions towards Gahan, rolled her eyes and wrote the words Love Sword Spirit on the playing card that she had not touched for a long time. Then, she proudly handed it to Gahan. Gahan laughed dryly. He could only helplessly put the playing card into the box. "Thank you, my good sister, Etian." Qingpin happily hugged Etian, and the two of them rolled together. Qingpin's little face kept rubbing against Etian's. In the end, the two of them turned black together. "Retribution," Gahan snorted, then looked at Qi Jian and Shi Shui. Until now, only these two people had not handed over their playing cards. "There's half a minute left. If you exceed this time, don't blame me for canceling your chance," Gahan urged. As a result, Qi Jian immediately handed over its playing card. Gahan fixed his eyes on it. Unparalleled Sword Spirit. Gahan raised his head curiously and looked at Qi Jian in front of him. "Gahan, you will always be the unparalleled person in my heart. There will never be a second you in this world. You are my everything," Qi Jian said affectionately. "Qi Jian." Gahan was touched, and the two of them naturally hugged each other. The atmosphere had been brewed to an excellent point. Just as the two of them were about to have a romantic kiss, an uninvited guest interrupted all of this. "Here you go." The uninvited guest handed the playing card in his hand directly in front of Gahan and inserted it between Gahan and Qi Jian's lips, completely blocking the two hungry lips. "Well done, Shi Shui. Piss off these two shameless people." Zhu Xian clapped and cheered. Qi Jian rolled its eyes meaningfully. "Shi Shui, what's the origin of this name?" Gahan looked at the title written on the playing card, and his face showed some confusion. Gahan recognized the two words that formed the title, but when these two words were put together, Gahan did not recognize them. Gahan had never heard of this word on the playing card, so he could not help but ask Shi Shui. "I don't know either." Shi Shui shook her head and said faintly, "This is what my father told me. He said that this is a name that can change the world." "Yes." Gahan nodded non-committally and put the playing card into the box. At this point, the 9 playing cards with 7 different titles were all put into the box. All the sword maidens looked at the wooden box, eager to know which card would win the end and become Gahan's title. "I will throw this box into the sky, and then I will fight against the sword Qi. The first card that falls to the ground will be the winner." Gahan told all the sword maidens the rules, and then threw the box into the air without hesitation. In the next second, a sword Qi directly hit the box, and the entire box was smashed into pieces. However, the playing cards in the box were not damaged at all. After floating to the highest point, they began to slowly fall. It could be seen that Gahan's control over his power was extremely exquisite. There was clearly a sword Qi that hit the box, but the playing cards in the box did not seem to be affected at all. They continued to rise according to their original inertia for a period of time, and finally lost their inertia at the same time and slowly fell down like a leaf. "Which one is it?" The sword maiden stared closely at the playing cards that fell in the air. Very soon, a playing card stood out and was slightly ahead of the other playing cards. If there were no changes, this playing card would definitely be the first to fall to the ground. "Mine! It's my playing card!" Etion suddenly shouted happily. Just now, the playing card flipped slightly, revealing the words written on the front. It was clearly the two words AI, Qing, written by Etion. Qing Pin, we won. We won. Etion and Qing Pin excitedly hugged each other and shouted, while the other sword maidens' faces were filled with envy. They were all sword experts, so they had the ability to determine the trajectory of the playing cards. They had clearly confirmed that Etion's playing card would fall first, and Etion and Qing Pin were definitely going to win. However, nothing in this world would go as smoothly as imagined. The Heavenly Swords poker card, which originally had a slight advantage, seemed to have been disturbed by some kind of airflow. It suddenly stopped in the air for less than 0.3 seconds. However, this 0.3 seconds was enough to change the world. The poker card that was originally in second place instantly replaced the Heavenly Swords position. In the end, it was the first to land on the ground and was immediately grabbed by Guhan. Cheating. Someone is cheating. Someone is using sword chi to disturb my playing cards. This scene instantly caused Etion to explode. She jumped out angrily, pointed at all the sword maidens, and shouted, "Who is it? Who is using such a shameless method to cheat? Come out. I'm going to beat you up so badly that even your mother won't recognize you." Enough. Guhan forcefully knocked Etion's head. No one is disturbing you. You're the one who's disturbing you. I saw it clearly. If it wasn't for you hugging Qing Pin and jumping around, there wouldn't be any airflow disturbing your playing cards. As the saying goes, don't be happy too early. Chapter 1248. Since Guhan said that Etion and Qing Pin reaped what they sowed, even Etion and Qing Pin had nothing to say. All the sword ladies knew Guhan's personality. Guhan would never lie about this kind of thing. Since Guhan said it, then it must be true. Annoying. I don't like you anymore. Qing Pin heartlessly pushed Etion away. His small face was filled with the word unkind, causing Etion to feel sad. However, the other sword ladies didn't pay attention to this pair of clowns at all. They were all staring at the poker card in Guhan's hand. Because all the sword ladies were paying attention to Etion's poker card, no one saw what was written on the second poker card. But now, the situation had been reversed. Other than Guhan, who was holding the card, none of the sword ladies knew what was written on the card. I didn't expect this. It's actually this poker card. Guhan raised his head and glanced at the sword ladies beside him with a bitter smile. He then brought the poker card in front of Shui and asked in an extremely serious tone, "Shui, tell me the truth. Do you really not know what this word means?" Never in a million years would he have thought that the last poker card chosen would be the Past Water Swords poker card. So, Guhan's last title was actually thought up by Shui, who had the coldest relationship with Guhan. I only know that it's a person's name. I don't know anything else, Shui said faintly. However, Guhan had a feeling that Shui definitely knew something. She just didn't want to tell him. I say, can you two stop talking in riddles? Shui, what did you write? You're so mysterious. Zhu Xian could no longer suppress the curiosity in his heart. He instantly appeared beside Guhan and snatched the poker card from Guhan's hand. Of course, this was because Guhan didn't stop him. Otherwise, even Zhu Xian wouldn't be able to snatch something from Guhan's hand so easily. Who the hell are you? How do you know this name? However, what Guhan did not expect was that the extinguished celestial sword only took a glance at the poker card before immediately drawing out his extinguished celestial sword and pressing it against Shui's throat. The expression on his face was extremely nervous, as if he was a member of the True Dragon clan whose reverse scale had been poked. Little sister, what are you doing? Zhu Xian's actions shocked Zhu Xian, and he immediately asked, I'm too lazy to explain. Sister, just look at this poker card and you'll understand. The celestial extinguished sword threw the poker card to the celestial execution sword. The celestial execution sword glanced at the words on the poker card, and its entire body trembled. What does it say? Let me have a look too. Xian Yuan sword's curiosity was completely aroused. It flew directly to the back of Zhu Xian's sword and secretly glanced at the poker card. Then, Then Xian Yuan sword directly fell from its floating state, but didn't say a word. What's wrong with you guys? What did the name on the card mean? Why did you guys have such a big reaction? The reactions of the extinguished celestial sword, the celestial execution sword, and the Xian Yuan sword shocked Gohan. At the same time, it also made Gohan understand that this name was probably not ordinary. It might even be related to the legendary sect leader of Tong Tian. This is a name that should have been forgotten. Zhu Xian's sword said faintly. That's right. But now this name has been mentioned by someone, and it's about to become your title. This is very interesting. The extinguished celestial sword's expression changed more than 10 times in an instant. Finally, it asked Shui once again, "Who the hell are you? Why did you take this title? You deliberately planned to become Gohan's sword lady. What do you want?" "I am the past water sword. My father told me this name. I don't know anything else." Shui did not care about the blade of the extinguished celestial sword at all. She still spoke calmly. "You're not an ordinary person to know this name. Apart from that family, there's definitely no one else in this world who knows this name. Stop pretending, or I'll really kill you." Extinguished celestial sword said fiercely. "I'm not lying. If you want to kill me, then kill me." After saying that, the past water sword shut his mouth tightly. "You." Just as the extinguished celestial sword was about to attack, he was stopped by an arm. "Don't make things difficult for her. She's my sword lady." Gohan grabbed the extinguished celestial sword's hand and forcefully let her go. Then he said, "Is that family you mentioned the Liunian family? If it is, then there's nothing strange about it. She has the blood of the Liunian family. Her father was the previous family leader of the Liunian family. It's not strange that her father would know this name." What? What kind of joke is this? How could someone from the Liunian family be a sword lady? Extinguished celestial sword was shocked. Disbelief was written all over his face. "Didn't you already see her memories when you pulled her into the illusion? Why do you still ask?" Gohan said in confusion. "She's very special. Her soul is slightly different from the souls of normal sword ladies. Furthermore, her love for you is very passionate, the most passionate of all the sword ladies. It's very difficult for me to control her with my illusion, let alone read her memories." Extinguished celestial sword explained. "Her soul is indeed not the soul of a normal sword lady." "Wait, what did you just say?" Gohan recalled what extinguished celestial sword had said. His expression instantly froze. "You mean Shui's feelings for me? Her feelings for you are very passionate. Is there a problem with that?" Extinguished celestial sword looked at Gohan and Shui curiously. "Have you forgotten? You had to put in a lot of effort to win the love of the other sword ladies before the incantation took effect. But this sword lady, you didn't do anything. You just made her recite the incantation, and she immediately recovered all her memories. This isn't this because she doesn't have any love for me in her heart. That's why she's like this?" Gohan said with some hesitation. "Are you kidding me? If she didn't have any love for you, she wouldn't have been pulled into my illusion. Otherwise, why do you think the sword of victory in your body didn't appear in my illusion?" Extinguished celestial sword shrugged. "Only a sword lady who has extreme love for you would be hard to control by my illusion. She would just have to recite the incantation, and she would return to normal." Gohan felt a little dizzy. If what extinguished celestial sword said was true, then didn't that mean that Shui, the sword lady who seemed to be the most estranged from him, was actually... Gohan turned around and was about to ask Shui something. In the end, Shui, whose face was completely red, didn't wait for Gohan to ask anything. She immediately returned her sword to Gohan's scabbard. "This is a little awkward." Gohan sighed. Then, he took the poker card from extinguished celestial sword's hand. He looked at it carefully a few times before asking extinguished celestial sword, "Tell me, can this title be used or not?" This extinguished celestial sword began to hesitate. Her expression was obviously filled with thousands of words, but in the end, she didn't say a single word. Clearly, there were many things hidden in her heart that she couldn't tell anyone. "I think it can be used." Beside her, extinguished celestial sword took a deep breath and interrupted. If Shui is really the descendant of the fleeting calendar, then this title is very likely to mean fleeting calendar. As for his descendants, I can still trust them. Moreover, Sister Extinguished Celestial, don't you think this is a great title? If Gohan really gets this title, then our chances of winning are no longer the reflection of the moon in the water, but the reflection of the flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. Sister, when you put it like that, it sounds quite reasonable. Extinguished Celestial Sword nodded with a slightly playful look on her face. Then, a smile gradually began to blossom on her face. Finally, she smiled and said to Gohan, I think this title is very good. Gohan, you can just use this title. The future will definitely be very interesting. Fine, it's just a title. It's just a name that people call me. Since the heavens have decided on this title, then it's decided to be this title. Gohan took one last look at the poker card in his hand, then directly flew out and cut cleanly into the ceiling. The ceiling was made of dimensional alloy, and the poker card in Gohan's hand was just an ordinary poker card. Yet, Gohan was able to easily insert the poker card into the solid dimensional alloy. From this, it could be seen that Gohan's control over his strength had reached a certain level. The poker card was left on the ceiling of the London hotel. It was not until a few years later, when the hotel was renovated and rebuilt, that a construction worker found the legendary poker card in the ceiling ruins. After another 100 years, the construction worker's family was in ruins, so his descendants brought the poker card to the auction house to be auctioned. In an instant, the entire auction market was blown up. In the end, it was sold for a high price of 2 billion yuan. After all, this was a poker card that decided Gohan's title. After receiving the poker card, the buyer quietly looked at the poker card for a full day and a night, and there were only 2 words written on the poker card, Hongjun. Hongjun, Sword Spirit? Is this the title that Gohan finally decided on? That night, the London Sword Committee received a message from Gohan, telling them that he had decided to use Hongjun as his title. Originally, Gohan should have informed the Sword Committee Association directly. But the funny thing was that although the Sword Committee Association asked Gohan to quickly report his title, they never lifted the wanted order for Gohan. So, Gohan could not be bothered to pay attention to the Sword Committee Association, who cared about its reputation, and directly sent his title to the London Sword Committee. As a result, the London Sword Committee did not report the result to the Sword Committee Association for the first time. Instead, it was handed over to Long Shi Jindi. Long Shi Jindi became the second person in the world to learn about Gohan's title. This Hongjun, what does it mean? Long Shi Jindi thought that he was knowledgeable. There were not many words in the world that he did not understand. But the newly decided title of Gohan really made Long Shi Jindi feel inexplicable. What did this Hongjun mean? Could it be an ancient plate? The Dragon Lion Sword Emperor wasn't a stubborn person. Since he couldn't figure it out, he directly searched the database of the Sword Committee Association. The database of the Sword Committee Association was the most comprehensive database in the world. If it wasn't in the database of the Sword Committee Association, then he wouldn't be able to find the meaning of this word anywhere else on the internet. What made Long Shi Jindi feel a little desperate was that the database of the Sword Committee Association did not have the meaning of this word. It felt like Gohan had forcibly put these 2 words together. Forget it. It's none of my business what people like to call me. Why should I worry about it? Long Shi Jindi smiled bitterly and transferred Gohan's title to the Sword Committee Association. After this was done, Long Shi Jindi was ready to rest. But just as he took off his clothes, he opened his personal terminal and sent Gohan's title to a communication number marked with the name Fleeting Wooden Fish. Hongjun, Sword Spirit. In the distant fleeting mountain of Jing City, Fleeting Wooden Fish, who had not slept, had been staring at the communication sent by Long Shi Jindi for a full hour. It was not until an hour later that Fleeting Wooden Fish let out a long sigh and said to himself, Ancestor, everything is going according to your plan, but where will your plan lead the world? Why did you arrange this plan in the hands of an outsider? Don't tell me that you look down on us, your descendants. Grandpa, why are you looking for me? When fleeting wooden fish muttered to himself, Liu Ling's voice sounded at the right time. After a while, Liu Ling appeared in front of fleeting wooden fish. Since leaving Shanghai Pass early, Liu Ling had rarely returned home. She had been wandering outside, constantly fighting with Yuan Ko. It was said that no less than 10,000 Yuan Ko had died in her hands, and there were even 3 U-level Yuan Ko among them. It must be known that Liu Ling was only at the spirit sword level at that time. Come, let Grandpa hug you. Grandpa hasn't hugged you for a long time. Fleeting wooden fish opened his arms to Liu Ling. Of course, Liu Ling could not resist her own relatives, so she obediently sat in fleeting wooden fish's arms and felt the smell of her grandpa's decay. It was a smell unique to people who were about to die. You have suffered these days. Grandpa has let you down, fleeting wooden fish said faintly. The path was chosen by Ling herself. It has nothing to do with Grandpa. Ling will not blame Grandpa, Liu Ling said, feeling touched. In the end, it was Grandpa who harmed you. In the end, it was the blood in your body that harmed you. If it wasn't for Grandpa's blood flowing in your body, you would be able to pursue your love with peace of mind instead of torturing yourself like this. Fleeting wooden fish's tone was filled with love and pity. It was a feeling that only a grandfather would have. Don't worry, Grandpa. If Ling had a choice, then Ling would definitely be born here and become Grandpa's granddaughter, Liu Ling said sincerely. Good girl, then Grandpa will be at ease. Fleeting wooden fish nodded and took out an invitation card from his waist. He placed it in Fleeting Ling's hands. I'm old, and I can't walk anymore. I'm also not interested in exploring the ocean. You can go on my behalf. Fleeting Ling took the invitation card and took a look at it. He sucked in a breath of cold air and stood up in disbelief. He looked at his grandfather, who was getting older and older, and asked, Grandfather, is this really possible? Aren't you afraid? What's there to be afraid of? Fleeting wooden fish smiled, but it looked like a cracked piece of dead wood. This is your problem, not Grandpa's. Grandpa will pass away sooner or later, and you have to face everything on your own. Let me tell you, from today onwards, Grandpa will give you true freedom. No matter what you do, Grandpa will not interfere with you. Grandpa will not stop you. Even if you marry him, Grandpa will give you his blessings with a smile. Fleeting wooden fish said with some difficulty. Grandpa, it's too late. It's all too late. Liu Ling could no longer hold back her tears. She hugged her grandfather and wailed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.